Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of r/Entitled People Stories. Today we have a very special episode for you, a compilation of some of the best entitled people stories we've read over the past year. So sit back, relax, and enjoy a few hours of the most entitled people you've ever heard of. And by the way, Karen assured me that for every thumbs up this video gets, she won't try to get anyone fired for an entire week. So please smash that like button and subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. I fired my Karen sister-in-law. My sister-in-law, sister of my late husband, has been providing childcare for my son, who's 10, for the past few years. It's been mostly after school while I work, but now that schools are closed, he's been with her most of the day. I've paid her for babysitting, and that's the bulk of her income. She also sells essential oils through an MLM, but I don't think she makes much money that way. They get along really well. She isn't the problem. But she's recently become involved with a man who's there frequently, and my son can't stand him. I'm with my son on this. The boyfriend calls him a nerd and makes fun of him for loving science. His big thing is telling my son that his military service, we have mandatory male conscription in our country, will toughen him up, and that the officers love breaking weak people. My son is already frightened about the thought of his military service and started having nightmares about it. I asked my sister-in-law not to allow this around my son, but she says he lives with her Tuesday through Friday now. I hadn't heard this before, and I told her that if she wanted to keep watching my son, it was going to need to be at my own home. That went well for a bit, but on Friday, she brought the boyfriend to my house with her. I'm not 100% sure what happened, but he somehow broke one of my son's favorite toys, a custom-made action figure of Odo from DS9. I've had this action figure specially made by an Etsy seller for Christmas last year, since my son loves Odo and there aren't many toys of him available. I can't replace it since the Etsy shop no longer exists. My son is absolutely heartbroken. So I told my sister-in-law that I won't need her to babysit anymore. My daughter is a teenager now, and she's willing to watch her brother until I find another babysitter. My sister-in-law begged me to give her another chance, but I feel that babysitting in my home was the other chance, and she blew it by bringing this jerk over. She says she really needs the money, and she wants to fix the relationship with her nephew. She promises she won't let her boyfriend come over again. Am I the jerk for saying no? Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or sister-in-law? Please let us know. I don't blame OP one bit. If sister-in-law won't even stick up for her nephew, then she ain't worth a darn. He can't play guitar, he's faking it. I've been browsing this subreddit for a few days now and decided to give my fair share of entitlement. I'm 14 years old and I live in the Netherlands. My English isn't that good, please don't mind it. My father is Dutch and my mom is Vietnamese. I've been playing guitar for over 5 years and I really enjoy doing it. My dad listened to a lot of Dream Theater and grew up with that. I play a lot of progressive metal. This happened last year before lockdown came. I was 14. We had this talent show in the 2nd grade of middle school and I decided to join. I played The Endless Knot by Haken, a great song, with a little improvised solo in the silent piano part near the end. There were no real awards, but it was mostly for enjoyment. There were like 10 other participants. 6 of them were girls that sang, 1 group that danced, 2 comedians, and 1 other guitarist. I won. I was really happy, and the other participants were really nice. I personally found 1 comedian hilarious that had some good jokes. There were a lot of parents that gave me a standing ovation, and it was one of the best moments of my life. My parents weren't there because of work. One of the girls that sang was crying because she hadn't won, and her mom, entitled mom, came to comfort her. I didn't get a reward, and the talent show was just for entertainment and fun. But this entitled mom was so mad that her daughter didn't win. She went to the jury and said that I faked my guitar playing, although I practiced a lot for it. I got on the stage and she followed me. She started accusing me of faking in front of everyone. First, I thought she knew the song and that it's played on a 7-string guitar. I used an Epiphone Les Paul with single coils and 6 strings. I played the lower part just 1 octave higher and it sounded fine, but she never said anything about that. She also said that a guitar could never make such sounds, and I explained that it was plugged into an amplifier with my self-made pedal board. After that came this ridiculous conversation. The conversation went like this. roughly translated from Dutch. Entitled Mom: How dare you make my daughter cry with that faking of yours? Me: Ma'am, I didn't fake my playing. But a kid like you could never play something like that. There is no explanation. You're faking. Obviously, she didn't have any real arguments. Me: Why would I participate in a talent show without an award and fake something? After that, she went a little quiet. Then prove that you're not faking it. I played a few ladders on high speed and the solo of the song without backing track. At this point, the audience was agreeing with me and they told the lady to please leave the stage. After that, she got into the whole evil thing. I was wearing a Tool shirt with kind of a graphic back. Because you're evil. Me: What? Yes, I see that shirt. It's pure blasphemy. Me: It's a band shirt. They aren't evil. I don't believe it. You're going to manipulate us all with that music of yours. Me: I'm not manipulating anyone. I'm just doing this for fun. Buzz off, you little jerk. Go back to your evilness. Me: I'm getting really upset at this point. I'm not evil, and don't call me any names. Entitled Mom continues her name calling. The jury asked her to please leave the stage. Her daughter tried to stop her mother, but the Entitled Mom kept on going. The daughter was really embarrassed and ran away. The Entitled Mom looked at me and said, Look what you've done. She approached and tried to attack me, but I just got away from her and she was taken away as she screamed at me. She was banned from the school and never heard of her again. The daughter eventually confronted me at school and apologized. I accepted the apology and we became friends. Went a few times to her house, but never saw her mom. Never asked what happened because I didn't want to think about her anymore. Speaking of guitars, do you play any instruments? And if so, which ones? Please let us know. I play the piano myself. Fur Karen is my favorite piece. Leave with the team? Sure thing. I work for a popular grocery chain that operates in the southeastern United States, where shopping at is supposedly a great time. I've been with the company for 18 years, 4 of them as a department manager before I stepped down due to being a salaried worker that worked ridiculous amounts of overtime without compensation. That was recently dealt with via a class action lawsuit. I still work in the same department in which I was once a manager, so I know just about everything there is to know. If anything goes wrong, I can make it right. If anything breaks, I can fix it. My current manager is an awesome boss that I'd do anything to help out. He understands that his employees are people and not just minions to do his bidding. He's willing to work with you on any schedule needs, so we're all willing to do the same. That being said, about 2 years ago, we were short-handed on employees that were able to close the department, particularly those that could close the kitchen. We talked, and I agreed to close every night for a while until we could get more people on board and trained in the different areas of the department. This went on longer than expected, and he apologized, but I told him not to worry, as I was actually enjoying having a regular schedule, even though the hours weren't ideal. Fast forward a few months, and we're finally staffed properly, and my manager thanks me for my help, and we agree that I'll continue working nights because I like the consistency, and he knows that I'll always make sure everything is set up well for the next morning, and I make his job easier for doing so. During this time, we picked a lot of great workers and a couple awful ones. The great workers were amazing to work with. I called them my A-team, and we'd often get off work 30 to 45 minutes early because we helped each other out and got stuff done. The awful workers took note of willingness to help out and would neglect parts of their closing duties because they knew the A-team would get it done in order to get off ASAP. This goes on for a while and gets worse, reaching a point where the other A-teamers and I talk to our boss and say we don't mind helping people out, but we're done doing other people's jobs for them. He agrees and changes the policy so that once we're done with our sections, we can clock out and leave after being checked out by the manager in charge. The event. Things have been going pretty well, and as long as 2 or more of my A-team workers are closing with me, we're still able to get out early as a team. We always make sure to set up any other closers for success and do any general work like taking out the trash, adjusting inventories, etc. before leaving, but we're still able to leave a little early. This is important because we never have to worry about getting overtime. We have a strict no overtime policy. Even 1 minute of overtime will earn a write-up for the employee and my manager unless approved ahead of time. Then it happens. 3 out of the 4 other A-teamers quit within 2 weeks of each other. One found a better job, one had a family crisis to handle, another moved. I went from working with coworkers that had years of experience in the department to coworkers that have been with the company for less than 6 months for the most part. There are a few coworkers that are approaching their 1-year mark, but I still have more experience than all my fellow closers combined, probably tenfold. Suddenly, instead of getting out early, I'm having to work past my scheduled times on bad nights and barely getting out on time on good nights. I try to manage my own time in order to not have to leave early or come in late, but I've been cutting it close. 3 weeks ago, a particular manager in charge, there's 7 that each have a set night to close, is closing. I'm closing with newbies, and I'm in danger of going into overtime. This is a Thursday night, and while I do close Friday, final day of our week cycle, I make sure to keep some wiggle room in case anything goes wrong on Friday night that keeps me from leaving on time. I finish closing my section, take trash, adjust inventory, and generally help out as much as I can until it's my scheduled time off, at which point I clock out and page my manager in charge to check me out. I'd have paged sooner, but I knew that my section was clear. Again, I've been doing this for a long time and wasn't going to be asked to work off the clock. The following conversation occurs. Manager in charge.
Why are you paging me over here? The others are clearly not finished, and you should be helping them.
Me. I paged you to clear my section so that I can leave and not worry about overtime. I did XYZ to help them out, and all they have left shouldn't take more than 10 minutes or so. Her.
Do you work tomorrow?
Me. Yes, but I'm closing kitchen and always come in early on those days to ensure a smooth transition and make sure I don't fall behind. The little bit of wiggle room I have left to avoid overtime is going to be used for that. Her.
You can't be in danger of overtime if you still have another day to work. You know that the entire department is supposed to leave as a team. You leaving before your coworkers isn't right. I'll let you leave this time, but from now on, you leave with your team.
Side note. This manager in charge came in from a sister store after the fiasco mentioned in the setup. The next day, I talked to my direct manager and asked him how he wants me to handle the situation. He assures me that I did the right thing and was just managing my own time in order to avoid overtime. He knows that I always try to set everyone up for success. The entire reason I'm still closing 5 nights a week is for this very purpose after all. I should also mention that on this particular night, with said manager in charge, I left the department a fair number of times to do extra work, get trucks from the back, clean up the back room of cardboard and trash, take out old grease to the canister outside, etc. And she came looking for me while I was doing the side jobs on 2 occasions. On the second occasion, she told me that she wanted me to alert her anytime I'm going to leave the department so she'd know my whereabouts. I thought it was odd, since no one else had to do this, but whatever. I later learned that she told my manager that I was taking entirely too many smoke breaks. I take 2 a day, as per company policy, and said that I wasn't doing what I said I was doing for the side work and just using them for extra breaks. I sighed internally and had an idea. It was time for some malicious compliance. Every night that this manager in charge has closed, I've had a great time complying to her wishes. First, every time I leave the department, she knows. Going to the restroom? Paged. Lunch break? Paged. Taking cardboard to the baler? Running trash? Having to help a customer outside my department? Paged, paged, paged. She's gotta know where I am, right? Secondly, I still refuse to put myself in danger of overtime while also refusing to work off of the clock. So what happens? I punch out at my scheduled time no matter what, and then I'm on my own time. I sit down at my manager's desk, pull up other malicious compliance stories from this sub or YouTube, and start enjoying malicious compliance posts at full volume while my coworkers continue to finish up around me. Last week, she sees me on my phone. Her.
What exactly are you doing? There's still more work to be done. Don't you see your coworkers still working? Why are you just sitting there?
Me. I've already done my work, helped out as much as I could, but still had to clock out on time. I'm just here waiting for them to finish so we can leave as a team. That's what you wanted, right? The fallout. Nothing spectacular yet. She gives me the stink eye every now and again when she sees me, and I simply smirk back at her. She tried complaining to my manager, but he always has my back. I even shared with him that I've considered further malicious compliance if she keeps pushing me by keeping her updated on my whereabouts even when she's not the manager in charge. I'm keeping that one up my sleeve for the time being. She never stated that my updates were needed only when she was the manager in charge, so I'm just waiting for her to try something else. Have you ever had a manager that kept getting on your nerves? If so, what did you do about it? Please let us know. You get on my nerves, but you're not my manager or anything. Front seat. My wife and I live 15 hours away from my family. This is so that she can be close to her family and so that I don't have to deal with mine on the daily basis. The other day, about a week or two ago, we decided to visit my family. When we get there, everything is going great. We're all getting along and happy to see each other. About 3 hours into our visit, I decided to show my wife around my hometown. She had never visited before and had only met my folks once at our wedding. Both of my parents volunteered to tag along just in case I get lost. I hadn't been back home in years and some of the roads had been changed. We agreed that it was a good idea and started to load up in my car. As I started to buckle up, I noticed my mother is getting into the front passenger seat. I stopped and looked to my wife, who was staring at my mother with a confused expression. Mom? I said, trying to sound polite because I know the slightest thing can set her off. Can you hop in the back? That's my wife's seat, and she gets car sickness if she's in the back. My mother scoffs and rolls her eyes at me. She can just sit in the back seat, she said, exasperated, as if she had explained this thousands of times to me. We won't be gone long, so she won't get car sick. Now, my wife can get car sick from a 3-minute drive if she's in the back seat, especially when she's around strangers. And yes, my folks are strangers to her. Taking all of this into consideration, I quickly pipe up and say, so can you. I'm not arguing with you on this, Mom. This is my car, and I want my wife to enjoy being able to look around where I grew up. She scoffs again and turns to me and says, with the most condescending tone I've ever heard, You won't mind if I take this seat, will you? He's my baby boy, and I haven't been able to see him since you heartlessly took him away from me. Luckily, my wife and I didn't have to do anything because my hero of a father jumped in and told my mother to get out of the car. He isn't the type to deal with BS, and my mother knows this. She quickly hopped out and turned to get into the back seat. I sighed in relief for a moment until my father stopped her. We are not going with them, he said, anger very evident on his face as he stepped in front of my mother. We need to talk about how you treat our daughter. You see, my mother has never liked my wife, where my father treats her no different from many of my siblings and I. Needless to say, an argument broke out and my wife and I left without seeing the town. Edit. Thank you so much for the upvotes. I didn't think this would blow up like this. Since this has gained so many upvotes, I thought it would be fine to tell y'all something that I find hilarious. If you read the comments below, you would have noticed that I have said, if my father wasn't married, I could see him taking my mother-in-law out for drinks. This is mostly due to the fact that other than these two getting along so well, my father-in-law is just like my mother, and my mother-in-law is just like my father. My wife and I always make the comparison between the two, because just like my father, my mother-in-law accepted me into their family once she got to know me. Now, admittedly, she didn't accept me right off the bat, and even grilled me for months, thinking I was just like my wife's ex, and only accepted me when she saw how I treated my wife with respect. My father, on the other hand, started joking, and still does, about how if we ever get divorced, he's keeping my wife as his daughter and getting rid of me the day he met her. Am I the jerk for building a fence on my property and not allowing my neighbor to hang stuff on it or paint it? This will probably be rather short, and I'm not sure if it's worth posting, but I really need to get a read on whether I am being the jerk or not. So here goes. I bought a house with a big yard several months ago. It's my very first house and the most expensive thing I've ever owned. Prior to this, I've only ever lived in apartments, and the dynamic between neighbors seems really different, which is another reason I am asking. When I moved here, there was a very old rotten wooden fence on the property separation line between me and my new neighbor's property. I wanted to replace it from the start, however, I decided to focus on the house first. You know, the usual stuff. Fixing up what needed fixing up. Painting, flooring, moving in the furniture, and so on before focusing on the yard. Now, the guy who owned my house before was an old man, and because of his age, the yard had not seen much work done for what I assume were several years. So it has been a lot of work fixing up the yard. About a month ago, I finally got some time to replace the fence. I went over to the neighbor's house, talked about replacing the fence, and if he was going to split the cost with me, but he would have none of it. He said the fence was fine, and he has no issue with no fence. so if I want to remove it, I should go ahead, but he was not giving me a dime to replace it. It's worth adding that the previous fence was completely on my property and purchased completely by the previous owner. The neighbor has no claim on it. While I was a bit weirded out by his response, I decided to just finance the fence myself and install it myself. Being quite a few bucks and a lot of hard work later, I am now the proud owner of a nice, tall wooden fence. I need to point out, just to make this clear, I paid for it entirely. I put it up myself. I removed the old fence on my own, and the fence is entirely on my side of the property line. I came home from work a few days ago to find my fence on the neighbor's side entirely filled with plant pots. The border also filled with all sorts of plants, and he had painted it. I went over to my neighbor and demanded he take all of it down, alongside demanding he'd get his sand grinder and take the paint off of my fence as well. After all, you don't want to pay for it. You don't get to paint it or hang anything on it, for that matter, plant stuff in my yard. As I said, the fence is entirely on my property, so the border of his yard where he planted stuff is also mine. He laughed at me and essentially told me to buzz off. Well, I went back there, tossed all of his crap off my fence, pulled all of his plants out and tossed them in his yard, and painted the side towards his fence an obnoxious bright yellow. I have since had him raging at my door. His kids came over to yell at me as they had worked for hours on it, and well, here we are. I'm wondering whether I am the jerk, as I might have gone too far. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his neighbor? Please let us know. I might have gone with a lime green color myself. Ken, you're asking the wrong department. And I don't work here. Just came from a big orange tools store and was in the tools aisle. Now there was an actual employee in the aisle next to mine helping another customer. Then another man walks up. Let's say he is the male Karen, Ken. Now this part I didn't see, but the employee claims he tapped her shoulder while she was speaking to the customer she was helping. She tells him she will get to him in a moment. He gets impatient and huffs and puffs for a minute. I could actually hear him doing this where I was. She unfortunately interrupts the first customer to ask Ken, "What do you need?" No, "How may I help you?" or "Do you need help?" Nope. Ken deservingly got the retail version of "buzz off" from her. He then asks her what he needs to make a bell siphon. Now for those who don't know, this is a plumbing device used to automatically suck water out with no mechanics like pumps when water gets to certain levels. She tells him that she doesn't know and he needs to go to plumbing. She then turns back to help the first customer. Ken gets mad and says she needs to help him. She turns back around and says, "I don't work in the plumbing department. All I know about what you're asking is siphon is something for water. That's plumbing, this is tools." He gets mad and storms off, which is where I now come in. He sees me. I'm wearing nothing that says I work there other than blue jeans. He walks up and says, "Tell me what I need to make a bell siphon." I would have helped him had he not just demanded that. So I tell him I don't work for the tool store and he needed to ask the plumbing department employee. He says, "I see you in here all the time. You all need to stop lying to your customers." I say okay and go back to what I was looking at in the tools department. He goes to some other employee and demands to see the manager. The manager comes over and tells him exactly what we both told him. He was asking the wrong department and I didn't work there. The manager did also say he knew how to make it and asked the man for his project measurements so he could get the right size pipes for him. Ken had to go home and get them because he never bothered to do that before coming to the store for the parts. Am I the jerk for telling my friend, a nurse, that her opinion is not worth as much as a doctor's? A group of friends and I were out today when one mentioned she wouldn't be able to make our upcoming lunch plans because she had a doctor's appointment. Someone else asked if she was all right, and she explained she had been having some minor symptoms and just figured she'd get it checked out because she has a family history of various genetic diseases, so likes to be extra cautious. One of the other people in the group, who happens to be an RN, asked her a bit more about her symptoms and background, then told her not to worry, that it was not anything serious and she should cancel her doctor's appointment. I trust and respect my friend, the nurse. However, I know nothing about her competence as a professional, and if my friend with the symptoms felt so strongly about what she was experiencing that she went out of her way to take off work and make a doctor's appointment, it seemed ridiculous to me that she wouldn't go based on that quick discussion with someone who hasn't treated her and didn't go to medical school with a specialty in the area of concern. My friend with the symptoms said she had canceled the appointment but seemed hesitant, so I spoke up and basically said, "Look, with all due respect, you're not her doctor, so I really think she, the doctor, needs to be the one to make that determination." My friend said, "Oh, I'm a nurse. I see this kind of thing all the time. That's definitely what it is. You can treat it with something over the counter." I told my friend one more time for good measure that she should do whatever makes her most comfortable, and if she thought she needed an appointment before, there's no reason to cancel it now. I also said something to the effect of, "A nurse is great, but that's not the same as a doctor who specializes in your area of concern," and she was just lucky to now have an extra bonus opinion. Our friend, who's the nurse, got very offended, saying it's wrong of me to try and discount her opinion just because she didn't go to a fancy A school and I was being extremely rude, etc. Now, a couple of other friends who were present are suggesting I'm the jerk for having said anything because it was disrespectful to our nurse friend who was just trying to be helpful. And if the one with the symptoms didn't trust her diagnosis, she was free to keep her appointment, so did not need my input. I feel that our friend was being pressured into accepting the hastily offered diagnosis, so it was necessary for me to reassure her that it was okay to still see the doctor, and she wouldn't be offending anyone or doing anything wrong by us. But apparently, that might have been incorrect of me, on both counts. So now I'm worried that I'm the jerk. I didn't mean to be a jerk, and I certainly didn't mean to make things harder on my friend, but now I'm worried I've done both. Am I the jerk? Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or the nurse? Please let us know. If the nurse wants to give medical advice, perhaps she should have gone to medical school. Mom begs for money despite buying new house and car. A little backstory. My mom, who is on SSDI, top tier, almost $2,800 a month, has a very hard time budgeting. Last year, she decided to sell my grandparents' house in Oregon to move back to the Seattle area. She got the house by having my grandma with dementia change the will and cut out her two siblings, my uncle and aunt. And after my grandma passed, the house and all the savings/belongings went to my mom. So she sells the house, and instead of buying a reasonable home, she has limited mobility, lots of prescriptions, and falls often. She buys herself and her 3 cats a 4,000 square foot home in a gated community. There was literally no money left over from the sale/acquisition of the new home. I had to help by paying for a moving van and helpers. Before this, she had a settlement from a slip/fall lawsuit of roughly $50,000, which she instantly rolls into a brand new 2018 Toyota Highlander. She had been left my grandma's 2013 Aspen SUV, but the gas mileage was not good enough. Then she backs into a tree and busts a taillight on her new car a few months after buying it. Goes to the dealership to fix the taillight. Decides she needs a brand new 2019 fully loaded Highlander with a tow package, which she has nothing to tow, so this is a mystery. She trades in her 2018 with 5,000 miles on it and takes out a $35,000 car loan, and this is on a fixed income, and she always has money struggles. So here's like $80,000 of car at this point. Excellent. She's constantly begging my bro, sis, and I for money. We are 38, brother, 36, me, 27, sister, and all trying to establish ourselves in our lives, careers, and financial security. I'm a stay-at-home mom with 2 kids. We live off my husband's income as an apprentice tradesman and have to be very frugal. We qualify to live in low-income housing, and I find ways to be resourceful, like donating our time and vehicle to help a local food bank, so we are able to get some food as well as help the community. We don't own a home or brand new fancy cars, and if you take away rent and do the math for just us 2 adults, we live on less than her monthly SSDI. Yet every month she has a sad story about how she can't afford X or Y. She finally canceled her $175 a month TV plan. I've asked her more times than I can count to please not bring up money matters with me. I've offered to help her budget, but she refuses the help, only wants money. Well, she brought up money the other day when she came over to our apartment to visit the grandkids, but really she came to pilfer the food bank transportation we do every Sunday before we drop off at the food bank, saying she didn't have enough money to pick up her prescriptions. This is just after she told me she gets her prescriptions in the mail. I think she has dementia. I told her I could spare $15 for gas money, but that was all. I explained we are a family of 4 living on 1 income and we have a tight budget. I remind her she has had plenty of opportunities to save or spend her money more wisely, so she takes the $15 and goes. I get a call the next day of her crying, saying that the way I brought up her poor money choices was terribly upsetting, pretty much making me out to be the villain and her the victim. This self-victimizing routine is her go-to. It's exhausting because I've done so much for her. I put my life on hold for 5 years after college to be her full-time caretaker. She fell and needed a hip replacement. I couldn't hold down a job or any healthy relationships because I was constantly being called back home to get this/that for her, take her to doctor's appointments, etc. I could literally write a novel in all the ways I've helped her. I feel like this post is a novella. Anyways, forget her for trying to make me out to be the bad guy because I don't give her money to get extra prescriptions to fuel her addiction. Forget her for even putting it out there and begging my family for money when she has so much. And lastly, forget her for never respecting my boundaries, which I need to preserve my well-being. After her sob story phone call, I was upset and it took me a few hours to get my head on straight. I wasn't a good mom to my kids at the time. So to be a better mom to my kids, I'm putting old mom in timeout. I need a break from her entitled self. End rant. Thank you and good night. Would you give your parents money if they had bad spending habits? And why or why not? Please let us know. Who are you to decide whether I have bad spending habits or not? My Karen sister took money from our safe. My little sister, who's 16, has had her fair share of behavior issues throughout the past few years. She doesn't keep up with school, lies, and was diagnosed with depression and anxiety, along with everyone else in our family. Since the beginning of this year, her behavior has gotten worse. She's been frequently lying and doctoring stories, as well as getting in trouble with the law, in and out of the house with zero consequences. A few weeks ago, she had called me and told me, along with everyone else in the family, that she had bought me tickets to my favorite artist's concert in the fall. I obviously questioned it and kept telling her not to lie to me, but she insisted it was true, so I got very excited. 2 weeks later, I noticed that she kept buying very expensive items such as a computer, new shoes, makeup, more electronics, etc. But I figured it was because she got a new job and was making better money. For the more expensive items like the computer, she told me it was a gift from a family member for her birthday, which was the week prior. She even went as far as to fake a phone call with said family member to thank them for such a wonderful gift. While she was having the time of her life, I was on a completely different path. A week before her birthday, my car's engine blew. I should note that I'm a college student who works minimum wage, and it would have been out of my price range to even try to afford a new engine, so the car got towed. I was devastated. My parents and my grandma decided to help me by getting me some money together, about $6,000, and giving it to me to buy a new car. About a week after I noticed my sister was buying these expensive products, I finally found my dream car. My parents and I went to grab the money from our safe to go and buy the car when we realized about $3,000 was missing from the envelopes we put together. My dad immediately checked my little sister's bank account to find a $1,200 deposit via ATM that week. We also found receipts from purchases that she made with the remaining cash. When we confronted my sister, she said she didn't know why she took the money. I was, and still am, devastated that my own blood would steal from me. But my parents, more so my dad, whose sister did the same thing, wants me to forgive her because she's apologized for it. I told him no way, and that she has yet to apologize to me, and that I have no intentions on having her in my life when she's acting like this. My dad says she's going through a tough time and needs our help. So, am I the jerk? Update. I want to add that as soon as my parents found out, we took her to return as much as we could. They were also devastated. Well, who do you agree with? OP or their dad? Please let us know. I'd press charges on her, daughter or not. What she's done is just horrible. Karen had a reservation for the 4th floor at a 3-floor hotel. Several years ago, I worked front desk at a privately owned hotel, non-chain, that had been a Days Inn 5 years prior. The only way to book a reservation was to talk to the front desk staff. No online reservations, no third-party reservations. About 50% of our rooms were sold to walk-ins. One holiday weekend, we are booked full. Our elderly elevator is having some trouble with all the traffic and spooking guests, so I close it up and call for a repairman, but it's 10 o'clock at night, so I'm not expecting anybody until the next morning. All of our guests are checked in. Our accessibility rooms are on the same floor as the lobby, so I'll just help out anyone with their luggage if they have more and put up a sign saying so. In walks a woman I don't recognize from check-in. She plops a piece of paper in front of me and then goes and gets lots of luggage. The paper shows her with a reservation at Days Inn at this address for tonight for 1/10 of the price we were selling before being fully booked. She comes back to the desk, likely thinking that I've been checking her in all this time. I regret to inform you that we do not accept third-party reservations. We are unfortunately already booked for the night. I have a reservation. It's right there. I paid good money for it. Ma'am, I believe you. Unfortunately, you are not in our system because we don't take third-party reservations. They sold it to you fraudulently. You are just trying to steal my money. I have a confirmation number right there. I handed it to you. Yes, ma'am. You handed me a reservation to a Days Inn. We are a different hotel, gesturing to a sign. All of the signage inside and outside the building is correct. Also, this is for a 4th floor room. We only have 3 floors. I stayed at this Days Inn last year on the 4th floor. This argument continues for a while, with me keeping my cool, informing her that we are booked. All of our rooms are full, me insisting that we don't have a 4th floor, not Days Inn, don't take third-party reservations, etc. Eventually, she screams at me that I am going to take her to the room on the 4th floor that she paid for right now. I don't respond. I just stare at her with a blank face until she slaps the desk and screams, "Now!" again. I don't mind making a room key, but I do grab my huge key ring and we both load ourselves up with her excessive luggage and climb the stairs. Once we get to the 3rd floor, I gesture to the 3rd floor sign and tell her it is the 3rd floor. I then use my maintenance key to unlock the door to the maintenance stairs, which are not lit, and she trudges up behind me, not saying anything. I open the door to the tarred roof and walk outside. And here is the 4th floor. I hope it is as nice as the last time you stayed here. I drop her luggage and go down the stairs back to the front desk. Honestly, had she been nicer to me, I would have tried to help her get a room at a different hotel and submit documentation to try and get her a refund or a charge back from the third party. But since she started screaming at me, I left her and her luggage on the roof. Plus, she insisted she had stayed on the 4th floor, so that's what she got. Edit. There was an option at the bottom of the stairs to go straight outside instead of coming by the front desk. I didn't see her again, and she wasn't there when I went to lock the roof back up on my midnight rounds. I'm going to make a couple of clarifications. For people concerned about her safety, this was a flat roof with a 4-foot facade/wall around the outside. It was not open to the public due to it being a tar roof instead of finished, but I took breaks and walked up there occasionally. Speaking of hotels, what was the last hotel you stayed at? Please let us know. Best Western all day, bruh. Don't send emails outside of work? Sure. Backstory. Some of our field agents in my company were taken off the road on full pay during lockdown, but expected to be available for retraining, etc. in anticipation of a return to work. At the beginning of last month, I started scheduling training for agents to return to the field. Before lockdown, these agents worked an 11 to 7 shift, and I usually worked business hours. There were times I'd be around from 7 a.m. or doing something at 9 in the evening though, and generally would respond to an email if I felt it warranted one at the time. During lockdown and retraining, agents were asked to be available during business hours instead for these trainings and not their usual shift. Everyone seemed happy enough to do this upon request. One agent, who can be a serial complainer at the best of times, started whining that he was getting emails outside of his work times, such as around 9 or 10 a.m. instead of 11 a.m. Now, I usually send invites to training, etc. or handouts whenever I get a free second, which could be around 8 a.m. or 8 p.m., depending on if I'm tied up in training sessions or meetings. No agent is obligated to check and or respond to anything outside of their work hours. However, it's more so it's in their inbox when they log on. A Teams invite went out about 9 a.m. for a training exercise 2 days later, as I wanted to keep scheduling ahead of myself and give the guys as much notice as I could. Serial complainer went to HR and said he has a right to disconnect. HR explained that he was under no obligation to read or reply to any of these emails as his shifts were 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. Remember, the shift is actually 11 a.m., but all agents were happy to work to a different schedule during training and finish at 5 p.m. instead. HR requested that this agent not receive emails outside of their contracted hours due to their complaint and right to disconnect. I said sure, no problem. Cue malicious compliance. I sent an email out at 9 p.m. 2 days later with some new information about some of the products that was due to be added the next day. This had only come via the client about an hour before. Agents were all now back to the 11 a.m. shift, and I wanted to have the information as soon as possible, as I had AL booked for the next day. I had left Serial Complainer out as per his request and had scheduled his email to send at 11 a.m. Serial Complainer then sent an email to me after receiving the email, whining that he hadn't been given adequate notice of the new information. My out of office was on as I was AL. Serial Complainer then called my work mobile and left a voicemail asking me to run through the product set with him. I didn't have my work phone on as, AL. I was then sent another email from him where he stated he was not informed of the products the same time as his colleagues and was being put at a disadvantage, and complained that I was unavailable to explain what he needed to know, which was unacceptable. I saw this email the next day after I returned from AL, and I replied at 11 a.m. stating that I am not obliged to respond to emails outside my work hours under the right to disconnect, and CC'd HR. I then emailed HR separately and brought up that Serial Complainer was suffering from a case of the old double standards. Everyone but Serial Complainer receives emails outside of work hours now, and every time Serial Complainer sends one outside of someone else's work hours, they don't respond until their shift starts. We all have, I may send this email at a time that is convenient for me. Please note, you are not obliged to respond outside of work hours. Serial Complainer is not happy, but rules are rules. Edit. AL means annual leave / paid holidays. Have you ever had a coworker who complained about everything? If so, what did you do about it? Please let us know. Sure, we can reschedule that class. So this is a fun bit of malicious compliance that shows why I love my new job. After being on the receiving end of more accidents than I like, I switched careers to working as a driver's ed teacher. I'm fairly easygoing, but there is one aspect of any job I have that is a bottom line. My time is my time. If I'm off the clock for any reason, then I don't work. So if your class is scheduled for 5:45 and you show up at 5:30, when I start my break, I'm not going to do anything. Most parents understand that after the scare of kids that don't understand not stopping on train tracks, that you go counterclockwise through roundabouts. Seriously, he jumped the curb to turn the wrong direction through it. And one panic-inducing moment where a student nearly went the wrong way down a highway. Rural area, so no on or off ramps, just a road that crossed it. I need my breaks to de-stress. If they show up early and I say I'm on break, they nod and wait, most of the time. Very seldom we get people that feel they have a right to demand I start a class early. This is one of those. First, it should be noted I don't have a uniform or badge, so aside from rooftopper on the training car, nothing says I work for the driving school. I had just settled down in my own car and was about to bite into my sub. 2 of my past students work at Subway and will discount my meals, when a woman knocks on my window. I open my door and step out, food still in hand. The following occurs. Karen: Are you Isa? We wanted to start this class early. Me: I'm sorry, I'm on lunch right now. His lesson starts in 30 minutes. Well, we need to start earlier. He needs to be home early for dinner, so he can't be out that late. Me: I'm sorry, but when you scheduled the class, the schedule was fixed so that I could have the necessary break and lunch times. Well then, reschedule this class and have your stupid lunch later. Me: Miss, it's my lunch break. I'm not being paid for this time, and I need to be on the clock and scheduled to teach under state law. Not really, but sometimes saying it's a legal requirement slows the entitlement train. I don't care. Teach him now. Oh, wow. That's a bright light bulb over my head. Let's play with this. Me: Okay, I can reschedule today's class. Just let me call the office and get that arranged for you. I grab my phone and dial the admin I deal with most of the time. Kat is great. She will let me know when parents and students cancel. She clears my schedule when I need her to take the car in for maintenance, and she doesn't like her teachers being bossed around by customers. After all, they need us more than we need them. Just to make it easier, I put the phone on speaker. Me: Hey Kat, Joe's mom Karen is here and wants to reschedule his lesson today. Kat: When does she want to move it to? Karen: I want him to start right now. Me: So yeah, I was thinking just cancel the 4:30 to 6:30 class and give me another at 4:10. Karen, why the heck is this taking so long? Kat, you sure you want to do this, ma'am? Yes, you idiot. Please stop shouting. My phone is on speaker. She can hear you perfectly fine. Kat, okay, I've canceled the original class and rescheduled it to start in 2 minutes. We'll note this in your records. Please remember there's a $50 fee for canceling within 24 hours. Have a good day. And she hung up, while I tried not to grin as Karen realized she had just been charged double the cost of a lesson to have it start 20 minutes early. And if she doesn't pay, then we can withhold the certificate her son needs to take his driver's test. For his part, the kid is actually pretty good. One of those students where we are mainly just going through the motions of driver's ed to appease the almighty BMV/DMV. And he's glad he gets to spend a couple of hours every few days driving without having to listen to his mother nagging him. Tourist demands a manager who speaks an understandable language to them. First of all, the people that haven't read my stories yet, I'm a polyglot. I speak Polish, English, German, and Spanish. I was born in Poland and currently live in Spain. On to the story. Back in the days when I used to work as the head waiter in a restaurant/bar in Spain, and in the absence of my boss or manager, I was in charge. This happened in the middle of the week during a pretty slow day. A middle-aged couple sat down at one of the tables outside, and already seeing them through the window, I could see they weren't locals. Once I came closer, I heard them speaking Polish, but started to speak English to me and asked for a card in English, to which I obliged. I don't always talk to foreign customers in their language if I know it. I can tell from the start how they will behave and their attitude, and I could tell that they were heading to the more entitled Karen and Kyle types of customers. Boy, was I spot on. They've been talking pretty loudly at their table, making fun of the other clients, and in generally being rude, all in Polish of course. After a few minutes, they waved me down. I asked if they were ready to order, to which they replied that they don't understand the card and need me to explain it to them. As the restaurant was basically empty, I tried to explain everything that they wanted to know, still in English though. After like 5 minutes of explaining half of the card, they told me they can't understand me and want someone who speaks clear English, or even better, Polish. Besides my colleague at the bar, I was the only waiter, so I tried to explain to them, but they cut me off and demanded someone who speaks their language or clear English. I smiled, told them I will see if I can bring someone over who can help them out better, and went in. Before going in, I heard them talk crap about me, saying how stupid someone can be not to be able to explain a menu. I took my sweet time inside with the AC on. I talked for a minute or two with my colleague at the bar, went to the kitchen and had a snack and a laugh with the cooks. Eventually I came out again and they weren't happy. As soon as they saw me, the Karen sighed and said with a dumb smile to her husband/boyfriend in Polish, "Look, the idiot is coming back." With the best forget you smile I could manage to bring to my face, I looked straight at them and said in pure, beautiful, and clear Polish, "Good afternoon, how can I help you?" As to be expected, they went pale white in a second. Still smiling at them, I asked if they wanted me to explain the menu to them. After the initial shock, the man looked at me and asked angrily, "Why didn't you tell us you speak Polish?" To which I calmly and with a smile replied, "You never asked." This answer apparently was a wrong one, and he got real angry with me. Red in the face, he was a few centimeters from mine when he stood up. Fun fact, I'm tall, 189 centimeters or 6 foot 2 inches. This guy was at least 30 centimeters, about 12 inches shorter than me, which meant he had to look up at me. "I want to speak to your manager, and he better speak coherent English." I smiled even more. "Of course, sir. I will call him immediately," and went in. You know where this is going. After a minute or two, I came out with the brightest grin in my life. They looked at me dumbfounded, while in the best and cleanest version of my American English I was forcibly taught back in school said, "Hello, I am the manager. How can I help you?" Let me tell you that they flipped out while I calmly stood there waiting for them to calm down. They never did. They packed their crap and left. After they left, I even paid their bill, which was €1 whole for a water bottle. I could handle such loss in my finances. They left me a nasty review on Facebook, which was quickly explained and answered by me, saying, "Next time, make sure your waiter speaks your language." The review was taken down after a couple of hours. Edit. Wow, thank you so much for the likes and awards. I didn't expect this to blow up so much. There are many comments, I can't answer all of them anymore, but I do read them. Thank you so much once again. Do you speak any other languages besides English? If so, which ones? Please let us know. Hablo español muy bien. Quiero hablar con tu gerente. Entitled bro parks in disabled ramp space at posh restaurant. Spoiler alert, he ends up being humiliated. This happened 2 years ago, so before lockdown, when I went out with a group of friends at a very posh restaurant in town for a birthday celebration for a friend who uses a wheelchair. Important for story later. The restaurant itself had only recently been awarded its first Michelin star, and reservations had to be made months in advance. For our area, this was the most posh restaurant around. Dress code, multi-course menu, minor local celebs in regular attendance, the works, and we were very excited to be there for our friend's birthday. The birthday boy was turning 70-something. Yikes, am I a bad friend that I forget? And lives with multiple sclerosis, so he uses a powered chair and has a fancy van with a little robotic mechanism that picks up his chair and him with it. For him, leaving the house at all is a painful ordeal, but when it was this restaurant, it was worth it. The dining room was all seated roughly at the same time, and dinner's many courses were certainly worthy of that Michelin star or more, a true feast. As we began to leave and got out of the front door, we could all see that the restaurant's small parking lot was quite full, and in the no parking zone / loading ramp of the disabled spot my friend's van was parked in was a brand new souped up hot rod, parked literally inches from the van's sliding door, so there was no way that he could get in. My friend was in tears and worried. He's sensitive and quiet, and so am I generally, until you hurt someone I love. I marched back inside the restaurant and yelled at the top of my lungs to the assembled restaurant, "Who parked illegally in a disabled loading zone?" Everyone looked up, but nobody moved. I yelled again, "Who parked blocking a disabled ramp? Someone in a wheelchair is now blocked in. The police are on their way to tow your car." Everyone began exchanging murmurs and glances, and finally, a young jerk bro got up from his table where a beautifully dressed woman sat, his mortified date. He ran out with his keys, but said loudly enough for people to hear, "They told me it was okay. I couldn't park my car in just any spot." My friend's wheelchair had by now also motored into the restaurant's front door, and his quiet voice spoke up loudly enough for everyone to hear, "It's never okay. You were very wrong." The jerk moved his car and meekly squeaked a half-hearted apology, but it was clear to everyone, any goodwill with his date had evaporated, as it had with everyone else at the restaurant. We didn't end up actually calling the cops, but we got nice justice from watching this entitled fool be humiliated so soundly. Am I the jerk for taking things that I bought when I moved out? I, 24 male, have been living with my roommate, Joe, 24 male, for 2 years. We both agreed when we moved in together that this was a temporary arrangement and we would move out after we raised money and set our sights on new houses. Not too long after we moved in, I bought a few nice new things for our communal kitchen. They aren't necessary: an extra toaster with more slots, a mixer for baking, some nicer plates and bowls than we had, etc. But they were nice to have. I guess I wasn't clear enough because apparently Joe assumed that those things would be shared for a while. 2 weeks ago, Joe and I decided that we would move into a different place together, still most likely temporary if we find something better. It has basically 2 separate houses combined into one. The thing to note is that we have our own small kitchens, since the house was made for people living completely separately. There is also a communal area that has places to put appliances and things. Well, I decided to take the things that I bought into my own kitchen. We had decided beforehand that our own rooms were our own, and we couldn't just use each other's belongings. When Joe saw that the toaster and stuff weren't in the communal area, he was confused and a little upset. He assumed that we would keep sharing them since he hadn't thought of a reason not to. I think it's more convenient for me to have my own things in my own rooms, and they aren't necessary things anyway. I told him that, but he didn't listen. I don't see why I'm obligated to share the things that I bought with my own money. I also don't see why it's my fault that Joe assumed he could always use my things. Joe's girlfriend called me yesterday to complain and said that I'm being unnecessarily mean and I should just share. I didn't appreciate being talked to like a toddler. Sharing is caring. Reddit, am I the jerk? Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or is Joe? Please let us know. You don't have to let him use your things. I'd probably let him though. I mean, why not? Am I the jerk for telling my daughter we're having financial problems? I, 36, female, adopted my niece Haley, who's 8, when she was 14 months old. Haley is beautiful, kind, and smart, and is the best thing that's ever happened to me. I own my own restaurant, and the shutdowns affected us, but I rent out a few houses and apartments, so I still had an income, and my best friend, Amy, 36, female, and her daughter, Grace, who's 7, moved in with us in January because she wanted to go back to school and wanted to save money. This arrangement was perfect because with her school schedule and my work schedule, one of us was always home with the girls, and we rarely had to pay for childcare. Now, between my restaurant, the rent from the houses and apartments, and some investments, Haley and I were pretty comfortable. There was recently a fire at my restaurant, and we're going to be out of business for a while. On top of that, one of my apartments flooded, and the repairs aren't cheap. Haley walked in while Amy and I were talking about our financial situation and budgeting. She asked what we were doing, and I said that Amy and I were trying to find ways that we could save money. She asked why we were doing that, and I told her that with the fire and the flood, money's tight right now, and told her that we'll be okay in a few months. She asked a few questions and offered to sell some of her toys and set up a lemonade stand to help out. I explained that this is between the grown-ups and that we just won't be able to go toy shopping or go out to eat too often, and we may have to postpone our trip to Disneyland. She said okay and went back to her room. The second Haley left, Amy laid into me for telling Haley about my financial situation and said that she's too young to know these things. In my opinion, telling an 8-year-old, "Mommy's not making that much money right now, so we can't go out to eat or get new toys that much. Everything's gonna be back to normal in a few months," isn't going to scar them for life. Am I the jerk for telling my daughter that we're having financial problems? Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or not? Please let us know. I wouldn't tell an 8-year-old these things, but I don't think it makes you a jerk. Entitled Karen pushes me out of my electric cart. So this just happened at my local grocery store, and I'm still fuming over it. For reference, I have a hereditary connective tissue disorder, HEDS, that makes my tendons, ligaments, skin, some veins, and other connective tissue very loose and stretchy. This causes chronic pain, frequent dislocations, hyperextensions, and generally loose joints. I also have a degenerative disc disease that makes my heart race every time I'm standing and can eventually cause me to pass out if I'm standing for too long. I can walk, but I have to use a cane when I do because I can't walk very well for very long. My knees don't like to support my body weight, and I can very easily dislocate a knee or a hip if I step ever so slightly wrong or happen to trip over anything. Because of this, I tend to use my wheelchair for longer outings. Thankfully, my local grocery store has those electric carts that customers can ride around in the store, so I don't have to go to the trouble of hauling my wheelchair out of the car and can just use one of those. So I'm in the store, doing some grocery shopping, minding my own business. I wasn't even really paying attention to the people around me because I just wanted to get what I needed and get out. One of these items I needed happened to be on the top shelf, so I got up out of my electric cart to get it off the shelf. The next thing I know, this Karen loses it because those cards are for people who need them, not kids who just want to take them for a joyride. I should add here that if you didn't know me or you've never seen me attempt to walk, there doesn't appear to be anything wrong with me. Other than the way I walk, I look perfectly healthy to the casual observer. Now, I get this kind of thing all the time when I'm using one of the store's electric carts, so I just rolled my eyes and told her that I do need it and started to move along to get the rest of my shopping done. Surprise, surprise, that wasn't the end of it. The next thing I know, this lady's hands are on my shoulders and she gives me a hefty shove and pushed me so hard I fell out of my cart. Now I'm just sitting there on the floor, stunned, while this lady yells at me in between generally incoherent ramblings about stupid college kids. Thankfully, at this point, my boyfriend came back from grabbing milk. He rounded the corner into the aisle and saw what was going on, and from the look on his face, I'm surprised he didn't deck her. The subsequent argument went something like this. Boyfriend: "Excuse me, what the heck do you think you're doing?" Karen: "This little brat thinks it's okay to steal carts from disabled folks." Boyfriend: "He is disabled, you idiot." Karen: "I saw him get up to reach for something. He's obviously faking it." Boyfriend: "You thick jerk. You think just because he can stand means he doesn't need a cart? And you think that gives you the right to assault him? What the heck is wrong with you? Boyfriend then proceeds to ask me if I want to call the cops. Lady starts freaking out over the possibility of actual charges, and I guess the commotion was enough that at this point, one of the store's managers decided to get involved. He sees me still on the floor, asks what's going on, and when my boyfriend explained what had happened, also asked me if I wanted to call the authorities. At this point, I had had enough, was pretty shaken up and on the verge of crying, which I don't like to do in public, and just wanted to go home. At the end of all this, the store manager comped my groceries, banned Karen from the store, and told me he would make sure that all the other stores from the chain that were in the area did too. I've had people give me the side eye or go so far as to chide me for using the store's electric carts before, but I have never had anyone put their hands on me until now. It makes me so mad because this lady literally just saw me stand up to reach something, and apparently that was reason enough for her to feel the need to physically remove me from the mobility aid I was using. Now, like I said, to the casual observer, I don't look disabled. Unless you saw me walking or saw me dislocate something, you probably wouldn't know there was anything wrong with me. It just makes me so angry because people ought to know that invisible illnesses exist and not all disabilities can be outwardly seen. Also, just because someone can stand up doesn't mean they don't need a wheelchair. It's not like only people who are paralyzed have the right to use one. And even if I was just a stupid college kid taking an electric cart for a spin, that still doesn't give someone the right to push me out of it. If you think I shouldn't be using it, go get a manager or something. Or better yet, mind your own business and finish your own shopping. I shouldn't have to explain my disability to everyone who sees me using a mobility aid. That happens a lot, even when I'm just using my cane. Random strangers will ask me what happened or how I got hurt. My go-to answer / shutdown for that is now, I was born, and I especially shouldn't have to fear for my physical safety every time I need to go grocery shopping. Anyway, sorry if this was long-winded or ranty. It was infuriating. My Karen sister demands I buy her a $300 prom dress. I, 23 female, have 2 younger siblings. My sister is 16 and my brother is 14. When my parents had my sister, they approached being a sibling as a job, and they stuck with that story for the rest of my childhood. They said it was my job to teach them things, to look out for them, look after them when needed. Then it was help with homework, walk home from school, and walk to friends' houses when they wanted to. Then it was my job to plan and take them out for sibling time. It would be my job to always have space and time for them whenever they needed it. That as the big sister, I owed them that. And my siblings were more than happy with that. When I lived at home, they always demanded my time or attention. I had to help with homework every day, and most of it is regular sibling stuff. But they came to expect me to drop everything for them the way a parent might. Like, if they were struggling and I was in the middle of my homework, I had to stop doing mine to help them with theirs. Or if I had plans and they wanted to go someplace, I had to cancel my plans. It's my parents' fault. But more than once, I tried talking to them about how I deserved to have my own life and do my own thing too. And then I moved out, and I would get calls all the time from my family about it. Over time, my brother stopped, and our relationship got a bit easier. But my sister never changed. She would call and tell me she wanted to stay the weekend with me, or she wanted me to take her to a concert, or that mom and dad told her I was supposed to take her shopping, or that she saw something in the store and I had to buy it for her. I told her twice in the last 2 years that I was not going to drop everything and do what she wanted, and she needed to get better at asking for this stuff. When I spoke to my parents, they said it was my obligation as a big sister to do these things, so they were no help. My sister got invited to some fake prom with her boyfriend because prom wasn't going ahead in her school this year. She calls me and tells me that she needs me to take her dress shopping, that she knows the dress she wants and everything, and that I need to bring $300. I tell her no. She ignores me and tells me that they want to stay at my place after this prom and that I need to give her a key to my place to make it easier. I cut her off and tell her no, none of this is happening. She whines and I tell her whining won't change it. She then tells me it's not fair and I owe her this. I snapped. I told her I am not her parent and I don't owe her anything. That she does not get to make demands of me because I'm older, because this is not some job like our parents always said, and if she can't accept that, then she needs to stop calling me. I'm the jerk in this situation according to my parents and sister. Parents read me the riot act, or started to, and I hung up. They are still upset 5 weeks later. Am I the jerk? Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her parents? Please let us know. I wouldn't want anything to do with those folks if I were her. Time for my own tale of revenge. Many years ago, my now ex-wife and I decided to upgrade from the small single-story home we were in and find something with more space for us to spread out. We had her teen son living with us, our 3 Rottweilers, plus I needed a dedicated study for my work. I'm in technology and often worked from home. After months of searching, we found our dream home. Beautiful 2-story, 4-bedroom plus study with huge amounts of space everywhere. Seriously huge. The laundry was bigger than my bedroom growing up. The quality of everything was amazing. Square set walls, no cornices, polished Tassie oak flooring, floor to high ceiling windows in the living areas, and 2 walls comprising commercial-grade bistro doors that opened up an entire corner of the house onto the covered outdoor entertaining area. The standard of the build was no surprise. This was a display home up until it landed on the market. We were to be the first people to live in it. I'm going to gloss over months of detail and pain, but we had problems with the place from day 2, literally. On night 2, the plumbing under the in-suite shower gave out and leaked through the kitchen ceiling underneath it. A couple of weeks later, during a monster storm, 3 of the light fixtures upstairs started leaking water. A month later, we noticed rust starting to show through the rendering on the corners of the house. There were heaps of smallish, easy-to-fix problems, but the kicker was that the balcony adjoining the master bedroom at the front of the house actually started to sag down, to the point that it was unsafe to go out there due to risk of collapse. We were mostly amenable and nice through most of this. The vendor, also the builder of course, was a small business, and we had no interest in making his life any more difficult than it already was for a small business owner. But conversely, we were pouring a lot of our hard-earned money into the mortgage, and we wanted what we paid for. But, for his own reasons, the builder just kept making it difficult to get things fixed. There was a seemingly endless list of excuses for not turning up at the agreed times, a non-stop torrent of blame directed at his subcontractors, and just plain crappy behavior, like dodging our calls and not responding to our emails. Of course, we started proceedings with our state's Consumer Affairs Department. After all, we were entitled to a 7-year warranty on our new home. But that process takes time. Time throughout which we were forced to endure issues like water leaks, a dangerous balcony we couldn't use, and a whole host of other issues that meant we weren't enjoying our home. There shouldn't have been any dispute about his responsibility to fix these problems. He just chose to be a jerk about it and make us go through the government process, presumably thinking we would give up before he was forced to do anything. At around the same time, we started getting the occasional knock at the door, only to open it and find a couple standing there with a brochure in their hands and our house pictured on the front. The first few of these conversations ended with us politely explaining that this was no longer a display house, it was our home. Without exception, they all apologized profusely and went away. After a month or so of this, I started to wonder, how was it that people still thought our house was a display home? I went looking and discovered that the builder's website still had our address listed for display. Despite repeated calls and emails, they steadfastly refused to remove our address from their website. This irritated the crap out of me. These people would often come knocking on weekends because that's when people go house shopping, right? But our pleas for our builder to update his site simply fell on deaf ears. Enough was enough. An idea had formed. Did I mention I was in technology? First thing I did was scrape their website and set about the task of creating my own version of it using their exact look and feel. I highlighted every single problem we'd found with the place. Every glamour shot was replaced with shots of the exact same feature, but showing the problems we had. Rust showing through the rendering, water leaking from the light fixtures, close-ups of the sagging balcony, etc. You get the idea. By the time I was done, I had what I felt was the perfect alternate version of their site. One that highlighted every single defect in the home, as well as calling out all the problems we had in dealing with the builder. I even included testimonials that were simply copies of the BS emails and texts we received from the builder, avoiding his responsibilities and making lame excuses for not fixing our problems. The headline testimonial was the one where he responded with, "So just don't go out onto the balcony," when I pointed out the clear safety risk it represented. After getting a lawyer friend to check through each page to make sure I wasn't opening myself up to some form of legal action, he helped me change a few sections, chuckling the whole time. I put the site up for hosting on some cheap and cheerful hosting provider Google told me about. offshore of course. I also registered a close but not close enough to be sued domain name to reach it. The next step was to create some actual collateral for execution of my plan. After all, there was no point going to all this effort unless I was actually able to direct people to the builder's website. So I took a copy of the brochure for our house that the builder had conveniently left a few of behind in one of the kitchen drawers and set about creating my own version of it. Similar principles as the website, no contact information except the website address, my website address. By this time, I've made good friends with a few of my neighbors, and we had taken to sharing a beer or two most nights on our front lawns. And wouldn't you know it, one of them was a manager for a local print shop. Given he already knew what heck we had been through with the builder, he took very little convincing to print off a run of my brochures for me on beautiful paper stock, nice and glossy, professional. I think it cost me half a dozen beers. Then came the final step in my plan. I waited. I waited for eager couples to turn up on my doorstep, eyes wide open in wonder at the beauty of the home they were going to pay the builder for their very own copy of. For the next 6 months or so, whenever one of these couples would turn up and knock on my door and explain their purpose, I'd let them know that this model home was selling so quickly that the builder had asked if I could hand out his updated brochure so potential buyers could go online and look up whatever the current display home address was. I don't know how many brochures I handed out. Of the 100 my neighbor printed for me, I probably only had 2 or 3 dozen left, but I know I also handed a bunch out to mates so they could have a laugh. I'd estimate close to 40 prospective buyers got a copy of my brochure, and I reckon at least 15 to 20 of these came back to thank me for warning them. A few of them had already signed conditional contracts and managed to get out of them one way or another. I don't know what happened to that builder in the end. I split up with the missus not too long after, and she sold the place not too long after that. At the time of writing this, the builder's website is gone. The domain still appears to be registered in the company's name, and their state business registration still appears to be active. As best I can tell, he's no longer at the last known address for the company, and I can't find any mention of the company online that isn't at least 6 years old. Hopefully, this jerk is out of business now, and hopefully the few dozen people I helped sidestep the pain of dealing with him were the beginning of the end of his crappy little enterprise. Have you ever bought something from someone and then found out that it was broken? If so, what'd you do about it? Please let us know. In 2009, I bought a gaming computer from a guy off Craigslist. Long story short, I learned my lesson. I gave you a $50 discount and you're still not happy? I used to work at a call center for a large Canadian telecommunications company. They are a service provider for TV, internet, home phones, and cell phones. I was a customer care agent, and at the time, I was working in the end of promotions department. I'd be the person you speak with when your 1 or 2 year discount was set to expire. I had been through many different departments before I was moved to the end of promotion team, so I had access to multiple discounts a regular care agent wouldn't have access to because they never changed my authorization when I was moved to the new department. This allowed me to bend the rules quite a bit when it came to renewing promotions for some customers. Now, most care agents have limited discounts they can give. Typically, the system would generate a discount for a customer account based on their tenure and services with us. That's what the company claimed, which I find to be BS, as I've seen accounts that were created back in '99 that would be tagged for only $10 off, and sometimes nothing at all, and they would have to pay in-market rates. This is where my access level came in handy. If I spoke with a customer who was super polite and gave me no trouble or stress, I would apply a better discount than what was originally tagged, especially if I see they've been with us for years and even sometimes decades. Example, tagged for $20 off. Give them $35 or $40 off instead. Now, the company always claimed to keep track if we apply discounts that a customer wouldn't be eligible for, but I think that was also BS because I did this to many accounts and it never came up during meetings with my manager. So one day I get a call, a customer that's been with the company for a year or two. Let's call him Mark. So Mark's promotion is coming to an end pretty soon and he's looking to get a new one and at the same time upgrade his services. He was on a mid-tier TV package and had 500 megabit unlimited internet. If I recall, he was probably paying around $140 per month. He wanted to move up to our highest TV package and our gigabit internet plan, which is the highest you can get for both TV and internet with this company. And this said company is not a budget service provider, so typically that combination of products would cost around $180 before taxes and the price just climbs up depending on how many boxes you have for the TV, if you have a home phone, and if you have any extra TV add-ons. So I tell him I will gladly look into it and place him on hold. Since he was very polite and I was in a good mood, I was happy to bend the rules for him, especially after seeing he was only tagged for a $15 discount. He had a $25 discount before, so he would have been paying $10 more if he wanted to keep his services the same, and definitely a whole lot more if he upgraded to the highest package. So eventually, I come back to him with a $50 discount for 1 year. He will still be paying more for making that change, but it's a whole lot better than the $15 off that he was supposed to get initially. Now, all of a sudden, his attitude and tone does a complete 180. He starts getting angry and starts getting rude. He was talking as if he thought I was joking when I said $50 is the most we could give him. He went on a rant about how he's been with us for so many years and how he deserves to pay less than what he was paying before, and on top of that, get upgraded services. I explained that unfortunately, because he is upgrading to our highest packages, that the increase in price is inevitable. I informed him that if he wanted to, the same discount could be applied to his current services and he'd be saving $25 more than what he's been paying. Then he pulls the same card I hear so often, like, "Well, my friend has that package and is only paying $80. Or, "I see newer customers getting it for so much less." Which in most cases, sure, it can happen. But with the combination of products he has, I know 100% he was just pulling these prices out of nowhere. He got angrier and was demanding that he gets a better discount. And on top of that, he wanted the Crave/Movies/HBO add-on, which costs $19.99, for free for a year, on top of that for wasting his time. I start to get frustrated and explained once again that it is not something we can do, and the $50 is the best we can offer. He asks to speak to retention, which at the time was the end of promotion department, and I explained that he's already speaking with them. He starts to lose it and says he wants to speak to a manager because he wants to pay what he feels like he should pay based on his tenure, which again was only around 2 years, which may seem like a long time, but in this kind of industry, it doesn't really mean much. We do have a dedicated team of managers that take calls when a customer is getting crazy. Their primary goal is just to defuse the situation, but they are not there to give better discounts if we already went through the best options, and they always made that very clear. I explained that a manager cannot provide a better discount, but I can still transfer him to one, as it is a company policy to get them to a manager if they request one, no matter what. So I place him on hold, and what we do is speak to the manager on the line first to explain the situation and the options we as an agent went through before escalating, and then they take the call from there. Usually you're supposed to disconnect from the call once you patch the customer through, but sometimes I like to stick around and mute myself just to listen to the manager tell the customer the exact same thing I already told them. Their reactions are usually priceless. So I explained to the manager, we'll call him Fred, that I had already offered the customer a way better discount than what we had before. I was worried that they would question why or how I gave them more than what we were tagged for, but this manager didn't seem to care. I explained how he had wanted to pay less than what he used to pay while upgrading to our highest package, and now on top of that have a $20 add-on given to him for free for a year. Fred scoffs because they understand how ridiculous that was and told me to patch him through. I add Mark to the call, introduce him to Fred, and explain that they will take the call from there. Now, all of a sudden, he's acting very polite again and says,
"Oh, thank you so much, OP. I hope you have a good rest of your day. Take care."
and continues this act while he talks to the manager as if he wasn't just screaming at the top of his lungs at me moments ago. I stick around to hear the conversation play out. Fred does a quick rundown of what Mark was asking us to do just to make sure nothing was missed, and Mark says, "Yup, that all sounds right to me." Then Fred pretty much tells him what he is asking for cannot be done, and that I had already offered the best discount we can provide, and explained that most customers pay way more for what he is being upgraded to. He starts getting angry again, and starts yelling that he is being mistreated as a long-term customer, and is threatening to cancel all of his services with us and move to a competitor. Fred says he's sorry he feels that way, and that if he would like to, they can start the cancellation procedure for him. Mark had had enough and hung up right after. I got a kick from hearing that and went on with my day. A month goes by. I'm taking calls and having a good day. It's slow, not a lot of callers, but the ones I do get have been very nice. And suddenly, a call comes in. The account pops up. I do a quick look over the account summary and see the customer's name. It looks familiar. I check the account's previous interactions and see mine and Fred's from a month ago. A big smile goes across my face as I am speaking to none other than Mark, calling us back again. Now, this kind of thing is very rare. With a company this big, we typically have a lot of callers and a lot of employees, so it's extremely uncommon that I speak to the same person more than once. I'm thinking because it was a slow day, they had given early leave to the agents who wanted it, so there must not have been a lot of agents online taking calls, thus having this call routed to me since I wasn't available. I do the standard greeting. Thank you for calling, how can I help? But in the inside, I've got a grin on my face because I know he's most likely calling us back because his discount had expired and his price has gone up. He's either calling to cancel or to try and get a discount again. I was right on the nose with that one. He calls saying that his discount has expired and he's looking to get a new one. Now, Mark didn't seem to recognize that he was talking to me again. He thought I was just a different agent because he mentioned he was given an offer from someone about a month ago that he was looking to accept. Here's where the malicious compliance comes in. As per our last call, you said you wanted a discount based off your tenure. Sure thing. As a matter of fact, the system has already generated a whopping $15 off based on that. I explained that unfortunately, because he's calling after his discount has ended, the original discount we had offered is now expired, and now we only have a $15 discount available. He starts to lose it again. Now, in some cases, this actually does happen, where if a discount isn't accepted before the other one expires, the new offer also expires and cannot be added. I can agree, it's some slimy stuff that this company does so they can get more money. In this case, because the original $50 discount was never supposed to be given in the first place, I was able to say this and only offer what he was really tagged for. Once again, he begins to lose it. It plays out the same as it did before. I explain that this is the best we can offer. He throws a fit, wants to speak to a manager. Again, managers are not there to apply better discounts. Sometimes we do have something called a documented promise, where if in the notes someone was offered something, say $50 off, and it didn't go through, we can still apply it. He could have lied and said he accepted it and it never went through, and the documented promise policy would have made it so that we had to give him that discount. In this case, because Fred and I both wrote in the notes that he declined that offer, it was gone for good. I once again transfer him to a manager and stick around to hear the fallout. The manager did not budge, told him the same thing, that $15 off was the only option, and once again, it ends with him hanging up. I unfortunately never figured out what happened with Mark's account, but here's what could have happened. 1. He's still paying the in-market price for his services, which is a lot more than what he was paying before. 2. He accepted the $15 off and is still paying more than before. 3. He canceled with us and moved to a competitor. One less problematic, rude, and entitled customer. Moral of this story: be nice to the person on the phone. If you're nice, an agent will most likely be willing to go above and beyond for you. If you're a jerk, in my case at least, I'm doing the bare minimum for you and definitely will not bend the rules for you. Again, most agents can't do that anyways, and in this case, I had access to these discounts, most likely by mistake. You should still be nice to the person on the other end of the phone, regardless. You want a ticket? Fine, you get a ticket. I work at a big online company that does lead generation for real estate, and prior to lockdown, I was working on our tech support team. But for one reason or another, not relevant to this post, they decided to move me and my teammates to the success team, a similar job but less techy. This happened on March 16th, the day we became work from home. Now, I realized pretty early on that I was never actually removed from any of the support roles' access. I could still view things I shouldn't, like, say, how many tickets they had open. In my day, we would finish all of our tickets in a day, to the point where we would watch Netflix and fight over inbound calls. At this time, they had over 3,000 open tickets. I'm a very nice person, very customer-oriented, so instead of adding to the ticket queue and making the customer wait a month or two for an answer, if they had called into the success team, I would try to resolve their issue now if I could, instead of sending them to the support team like I was technically supposed to for tech support. But not this customer. This customer called in screaming, and I'm good with de-escalation. I am. I tried to explain that I could help if she had let me. I tried to explain that I used to be part of the tech team. Heck, I even tried giving her their phone number because that is a faster way of getting help. But no, She just kept screaming at me to put a ticket in for her because she's having notification issues and she needs a ticket put in because her notifications aren't working. Literally broken record style. Why she couldn't put the ticket in herself, I have no idea. But you know what, ma'am? Sure, absolutely. There you go. I just put that ticket in and I'm sure the tech team will get to it as soon as they can. They were 6 weeks behind in answering tickets at that point. I have no idea what happened beyond that since it is a fairly big company, but I'm sure she called and screamed at someone else when the ticket wasn't answered right away. Still made me laugh though, because her issue was a fairly easy one to fix that I could actually have fixed for her in about 5 minutes if she'd have let me. But instead, I did what she asked and put in a ticket. New neighbor walks into our house because she knew previous owner. Cast, we've got me, fiance, my dad, and entitled neighbor. This happened 2 years ago when my fiance and I bought our townhouse. Here's some backstory. We found a townhouse for sale in a complex. It was in our price range but needed some work, mainly the basement. On the disclosure, the previous owner stated that the basement had flooded a few years previously. However, the basement was carpeted and had never been replaced or cleaned, so it smelled mildewy. The way the house is set up, there are 2 entrances, the front door and a door in the basement, both with doorbells. The basement was in 2 sections, an office and a playroom with the outside door. This is relevant for later. Okay, back to the story. I took a week off work and my fiance was able to take 2 days off so that we could start cleaning and prepping our new house. The first full day we had cut the basement carpet out and started scraping the glue off the floor. When my fiance was back at work, I was there alone cleaning. My father is a bit of a handyman and was really excited about us getting a house, so he was going to come down and help us. I was in the basement sweeping and cleaning, and because of the amount of dust, I left the door to the outside open, then went into the office to start cleaning in there, and that's when my father calls. Here is how I remember the conversation going. Me, hi Dad. Dad, hi kiddo, how's the new place? Me, need some work. Dad, I'm about to leave here. Do you need me to bring any tools down? I turn to leave the office. Me, no, I don't think so. Oh my goodness, who are you? There in the middle of the other section of the basement was a strange lady just standing there looking slightly disgusted by the mess. I nearly dropped my phone from the shock of a random person in my house. Entitled neighbor. I'm entitled neighbor. I live in the unit over there. Me, still in shock and extremely confused. What are you doing here? I know the previous owner. I don't say anything. You know you shouldn't leave this door open. Squirrels can get in. She then walks out the door, closing it behind her. I'm still in shock and looking like a trout with my mouth open. I snap out of it when I hear my dad still on the phone. Hello? Is everything okay? Me. I think I just met our neighbor. My fiance and I had a good laugh about it later. Edit. Here's some more backstory about the previous owner and people in the complex. There were 3 units for sale and we picked one that was in our price range and we liked the size too. One of the other units was Squirrel Lady's, and from what I was told by the HOA, she has since retired and moved to Florida. The other couples that were selling their unit were very nice and have also moved. But before they left, they told us that the previous owner was not well liked and was a total Karen. Her only friend was Squirrel Lady, and they had both been living here for over 15 years. No, I don't think the previous owner moved because people didn't like her. She was at least 80 when we met, and the townhouse has 2 flights of stairs. Her being fed up with the place is probably why she shouted, "I'm done," and ran out. And strangely enough, Squirrel Lady was right. We did end up having problems with squirrels. We even got a flying squirrel in our house once, but that's another story. I didn't know I'm not supposed to work here. This happened 2 years after I arrived in the USA, when I was 14 or 15 years old, sophomore in high school. So I'm trying to adapt myself to the new country. One of the issues that I'm facing back then is understanding places and locations. Also, this was back when there was no such thing as Google Maps, only Quest Map, where you have to print and carry with you everywhere, and I have no cell phone yet. My high school divides their grades into 5 sections, such as 10A, 10B, 10C, 10D, 10E, and the same thing for freshman, junior, and senior. One of the purposes of this was to make Career Development Day easier. In a specific day of the week, the school sends a bunch of students to their specific location outside of the school for the whole day in accordance to their section to learn about different careers and make a short story about what you've learned. For example, A goes to their locations on Monday, B on Tuesday, and so on. The purpose of Career Development Day is for students to go to the locations designated by the school and to shadow employees there so the students can write a report of what they've learned about specific careers. I didn't go to this school for my freshman grade, so I didn't know what career development was. However, I was a very shy kid, being new in the USA and all, so I didn't ask too many questions and just went along with it. When I received my roster for the year, I also received the address for my career development location for the year as well. I went to enter the address into MapQuest and printed it out, and I didn't realize I switched the number. For example, what's supposed to be 1333, I typed in as 3133. The first day of my career development day of the year, as expected, I went to the wrong address, which was a USPS warehouse. When I came into the facility, I was so confused, and so was the rest of the staff there. I didn't see any other students, and my teacher wasn't there as well. I tried to explain with my sort of broken English that I'm here for my career development day, showed the logo of my school on my uniform, and being extremely nervous. I think they understood what I was trying to say because the next minute, I was being put into work. It was super easy, just sorting mail, very mundane work. Career Development Day was supposed to last half a day, from 9 a.m. to 12:30 p.m., and then I go home. I started at 8 a.m. and sheepishly told the staff that my school dismissal time is 2:30 p.m. They were really nice, bought me lunch, a drink, and told me that I was a good helper. Also, they wrote a letter mentioning about what I had done the entire time I was there and gave it to me so I could show it to my teacher. The next day, I was being called to see the career development teacher. Turns out, I was marked absent for the day since I didn't show up, and nobody called the school to find out where I was. The funny thing is, the school didn't contact my parents to find out where I was as well. I showed the teacher the letter I had received from USPS staff, and after reading it, my teacher laughed until tears came out of her eyes. I was very embarrassed, but at least the teacher understood, forgave me, and removed my absence. She also pointed out that I was at the wrong address and printed me the real directions. I wish smartphones were invented back then, because I clearly was not smart. Let me answer some of the burning questions here. 1. Did I end up working at the USPS? I did not. I'm the typical I don't know what to do after high school type of person, so I was working on random jobs while in college, taking random classes. The thought of starting my career with the USPS didn't even cross my mind. 2. How's my English? It's getting so much better, thank you. This happened in 2005, so in 16 years of living in the US, I've had a lot of time to practice more. Still not perfect, still have a tiny bit of an accent, but at least I'm more confident now. My Karen mother moves in with me, chaos ensues. At the beginning of lockdowns here in Germany, my mother came to me saying I should let her live with me in my house because, wait for it, I am your mother. Well, I let her move into the granny apartment. It has a separate entrance and has one bedroom, one bathroom, a kitchen/dining room, and living room. While she slept in the bedroom in the apartment, she used the main kitchen to cook her meals, but refused to cook shared meals, used the main living room to watch TV, basically acted as if she owned the house. Any of my complaints she likewise dismissed. I am your mother. It all came to a head when I was working on a computer in the living room. There was a lull while the system setup was doing its thing, so I went to the kitchen to brew tea and have a snack. During this time, my mother went into the living room to watch TV. But I had been listening to Vivaldi's Four Seasons, so she started pulling power plugs in an attempt to shut off the music. One of the first plugs she pulled was, of course, the computer I had been working on. When I came back to the kitchen, she rejected any fault for it. According to her, it was clearly my fault because she had to shut off the music to watch TV. So why would she feel free to shut off my music in my house? Not to mention that I had to start over the system setup. Well, because I am your mother. I countered, and my mother is a guest in my house, so until you behave like a guest, you better go to your apartment. She didn't like being treated like that one bit. Well, she went to her apartment, then left. I went to a hardware store and bought some new locks. Until then, the keys for the main door also worked for the apartment door and vice versa. The inside door connecting the apartment and the main house didn't have a lock at all. So yes, I locked her out of the main part of the house. And then the phone calls started. First, my brother, to whom I suggested he take her in. The house he lives in alone is even larger than mine. Then my older sister, who has 2 spare rooms in her and her husband's condo since her kids moved out long ago, and who didn't like the suggestion she should take our mother in either. My sister's daughter was somewhat surprised when I explained to her that the house belongs to me and not to her grandmother. Her brother only called to get my confirmation about that. My brother's son was actually on my side, but warned me about my mother planning something. So a few days later, while running errands, I got a call from the hardware store from which I bought the new locks. They told me that the police had called them to send someone to open the house. What had my mother done? She called the police for help because her son had locked her out of her house. When the officers at my house confronted me with that, I simply told them to try her key at the door on the side. Obviously, they hadn't done that before. Then they wanted proof that it was actually I who owned the house. Oddly enough, the copies of the deed I had at home were nowhere to be found, so I called my attorney and he sent one of his partners with new copies. He also brought eviction papers telling me to consider it. I simply asked for a pen. A few days later, my mother moved in with my brother. Brother, older sister, and her husband helped her with her stuff. Brother made a last effort to make me change my mind. My sister merely treated me with contempt. Brother-in-law told me quietly he vetoed our mother moving in with them before my sister even made the suggestion. But this still isn't the end of it. The police officers are pressing charges for falsely reporting a crime, me locking her out. Everyone and their brother has called me to take back the charges. I hadn't pressed them in the first place. It's out of my hands. To tell the police that it's all just a misunderstanding, or at least put in a good word for her. Why? Of course, because she is your mother. Would you let your mother live with you if she treated you like this, or not? Please let us know. I'd put her out on the street, bruh. Maybe I'd get her a tent or something to live in. My meal must be salt-free. This story is from a dinner party I hosted before the lockdown. I invited 6 folks, and shortly after the invites were sent, I received a call from Sally. Sally, not her real name, advised me that she was now on a salt-free diet due to medical reasons. She advised that at home she cooked without any salt and gave me a speech about how wonderful salt-free life was. I was skeptical and advised her that I would personally find it difficult to give up all salt. Was she sure she wasn't just on a low-sodium diet? Sally advised that unless her dish was salt-free, she wouldn't be attending. While telling her no was an option, I'm not that person. I was ticked off at Sally for years of being difficult at the dinner table and restaurants. Trust me, there was always something wrong with her meal, or its preparation, or the flavor, or the waiter. Or, with a smile so large you could hear it through the phone, I assured her that her request for salt-free was 100% going to be accommodated. On the dinner night, I prepped the meal. Sally was getting the same thing as everyone else, with one critical difference. All her food was prepped in separate containers, baked on separate racks, and seasoned with exactly the same flavor sans salt. Dinner time and my guests arrive. I have all of Sally's food plated on white plates. Everyone else gets gray plates. First round, appetizers. Fried calamari with a lemon jalapeno butter sauce. This dish typically has salt in both the batter and the sauce. As Sally couldn't have that, I battered her calamari in salt-free seasonings and flour. Her condiment looked exactly the same, but was made with unsalted butter and no added salt. I place Sally's plate in front of her first, and she immediately states she asked for salt-free. I assure her that her dish is salt-free, and I made sure to cook hers separate and even use a different colored plate to keep it straight. We all sit to talk and enjoy the squid. Sally takes a bite and makes a face. "Mine has no flavor," she exclaims. All of my other guests tell Sally it's divine, delicious, best they've had, etc. I smile at Sally and assure her that her dish was flavored exactly as everyone else's. The only difference is that she received absolutely no salt. It's at this point that Sally has a moment of clarity. It's painfully obvious on her face. She realizes she can't complain about the lack of salt as she's already told the table about her salt-free life. She also can't claim it tastes terrible if everyone else is raving about the food. She literally looks like she was about to cry at the table. As my guests enjoy their dinner, Sally is slowly doing the toddler plays with her food munch and pushing her calamari around the plate. After a few moments, she reaches for the sauce that I made for everyone else. "Sally, be careful, the salt-free sauce is in the white bowl. That one has salt." She mumbles something about wanting to taste the difference before literally dumping the bowl on her calamari. She then exclaims how much better it tasted. You and I know that, of course, things taste better with salt. So this drama repeated itself over the main course of honey-roasted salmon with pine nuts. I also am no heathen and had both salt and pepper on my table for my guests. I'm not going to judge you for needing more flavor. Here we go. Sally takes a bite of her fish and once again realizes that it has no salt. She reaches for the salt shaker and conversation stops. Another guest asks Sally if she was okay with adding salt to her food. She says that she can occasionally have salt. She proceeds to shower her fish with salt sprinkles. I also baked some cookies for dessert. The dough uses a little salt. I made sure to whip up a separate batch of cookies wrapped to go for her. Salt-free, of course. When I handed her those cookies, the look of defeat that hit her face warmed my heart. Dinner is over, everyone is happy except for Sally. I called her the next week to make sure she was okay as she's consumed sodium at my party. Sally told me her doctor has removed her sodium restrictions and she won't need that accommodation at future meals. On the phone, I congratulate her for her good health. When I hang up, I laugh until my sides hurt. Salt-free life apparently doesn't taste good when the salt is actually omitted. Note: to anyone on a low or no sodium diet for their health, I commend you. Sally, however, wasn't actually on this diet. This is evidenced by her shock at how salt-free food tasted. I confirmed with her husband that she's never stopped using salt at home. Her salt-free claims were a ploy for attention that backfired tastelessly. Would you go through this kind of effort to accommodate a friend like this, or not? Please let us know. No way, I wouldn't invite her in the first place. Impatient Karen loses her job. For those not in the know, a mystery shopper is a person assigned by the company to make random, unannounced inspections with regards to customer service and in general, the well-being of the company employees and the store. Also, it is customary for these mystery shoppers to blend in with everyday customers and not bring attention to themselves in a way that can be misconstrued as just another obnoxious and rude customer, i.e., act like a jerk, get treated like a jerk. This lady didn't get that memo. One day around lunchtime, my boss was in the back having her lunch. I was out on the shop floor and serving customers, an unusually high amount, but nothing that I couldn't handle on my own since my coworker wasn't going to be in later. Then in walks Karen. As I was serving the queue of customers, I half-heartedly said, "Hi, welcome to..." I was hungry while still serving and ringing through items. Karen, and under her breath, "It's polite to make eye contact." Alarm bells. She hums and haws while I'm making my way cautiously and correctly through the remaining customers. All the while she's making daggers and eventually storms off in a huff, looking around. Like I can come away from paying customers just to help her. As the last two customers make their way to the till, she joins the queue with a whole 2 items with an audible, "Oh, for goodness sake." The customer I'm serving looks at me with a "what the heck" expression and I nod. Not even 1 minute in. This is ridiculous. Finalizing the payment before moving on to the next customer, the till decides to freeze and it takes a few minutes for it to reboot. I make my apologies and the customer I'm serving is fine with it, along with the customer behind. Louder, Karen. "Oh, for goodness sake, the service in this establishment," she was posh, "is absolutely ridiculous." I had enough. With my best, but upset, customer service voice and smile, I said, "Me, listen, as you can clearly see, I am dealing with other customers. I am the only staff member on the floor as my boss is at lunch. The till has decided to not play nice, and to be perfectly honest with you, I am well within my rights to refuse you service and ask you to leave as your attitude absolutely stinks." Karen, "What? You can't talk to me that way. Don't you know who I am?" Me, "I really don't care to be honest. Now I am once again asking you to leave." She storms off in the foulest mood you've ever seen. The customer I am serving says, "Thank goodness you said something. I was ready to lose it on her." We both laugh, and I finish both services and thank them for their patience. They both worked in another store where we were based. My boss has finally finished her lunch at this point and has come through the front. Boss: "Oh, I meant to say there's going to be a mystery shopper in at some point. Don't know who, but please be on your best behavior." Oh my. I quickly tell her what happened and explained that I was busy, but not too busy that I needed her, and the conversations as it happened. And lo and behold, just as I'm finished telling her, in walks the regional manager for the company. Regional manager: "OP, back office, now." I'm done for. Now, knowing that the RM has a tendency to be a hothead in these situations, I was really nervous at this point. Thankfully, I've had a reasonably good working relationship with him up until this point, so it really could go anyway. Regional manager: unusually calm. "What happened?" I explained everything, from the moment she entered to the moment she stormed off, almost taking the door with her, and the fact that I had witnesses that worked in the immediate vicinity. The full shebang. Regional manager sighs and nods. "I'm finally glad that someone else has the courage to stand up to my wife." What? The look on my face said it all, and he starts to laugh. "Please accept my apologies, and I will let your boss know that there's not to be any repercussions for this. And I think it's time to let my wife know it's time to find more suitable employment." Me, speechless, and mutters, Thanks." He hands me a 20-pound gift card for the mall's cafe and said lunch was on him. The best coffee and chicken bacon club sandwich I ever had. Am I the jerk for no longer letting my mother-in-law watch my daughter after she kept throwing away the food I sent? I'm a widower and have a 6-year-old daughter who's a very picky eater and got worse after her mother's passing. She loved her mother's cooking and refused to eat anything that isn't made by her mother. I decided to learn to cook her favorite meals that my wife used to cook, and my daughter has been loving my version of her mother's cooking. I recently started working a new job, and my mother-in-law started watching my daughter 3 days a week. I have my sister helping, so I'm doing good. I prepare meals for my daughter to take with her to grandparents' house so my mother-in-law won't have to worry about what my daughter can and cannot eat. My mother-in-law complained about the meals I sent and said I needed to encourage my daughter to eat from a variety of dishes. I already explained how my daughter is when it comes to food and that I'm already learning new dishes every week, so it's not repetitive. So last week, I discovered that my daughter has been eating only snacks for days at her grandparents' house. She told me this, and I was confused. I asked about the meals I send with her, and she said that her grandma would take them from her hand once I leave, throw them in the trash can, then tell her to eat dishes she makes. My daughter refused and has been only eating snacks at that house. I was enraged. I confronted my mother-in-law, and she said that she didn't find that me sending meals with my daughter was the right thing to do, and wanted her granddaughter to eat her cooking and was upset that she refused. She said it's my fault her granddaughter doesn't want to eat certain foods and that I was spoiling her rotten with this behavior. I mentioned to her that the meals she threw away were my wife's recipes and that I struggle so hard to provide those meals, as well as taking time to learn to cook them. She stated I wasn't doing a good job parenting and needed to get a grip because she's feeling concerned about how spoiled my daughter is being because of me. Eventually, I told her that I won't let her watch my daughter from now on and decided to ask my sister for help. Father-in-law and sister-in-law kept on calling me cruel for not letting them see their granddaughter, and father-in-law said that I was overreacting and promised to convince his wife to let my daughter eat what she wants as long as she visits, but I refuse to discuss it because right now, I really don't take what they say at face value. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or mother-in-law? Please let us know. Bruh, how you gonna throw away food like that? Booking a wedding block room the day before the wedding. Last night, a young man came to the desk to ask for room availability for the weekend. He was obviously pretty far gone intoxicated-wise, but not completely. Just enough to still be coherent. Man.
Hey, how are you?
Me. Fine. And yourself?
Great.
He kind of stands there and stares. Despite the mask, I can tell he's smiling. Me, is there something I can help you with?
Yeah, there is. You see, I understand there's a night minimum of 3 nights for the weekend. I was told that when I tried booking before, and I was wondering if you could do me a favor.
Me, okay, what do you need? Man,
Well, see, I'm here for a wedding, and I know there's a 3-night minimum for this weekend, so I was wondering if I could book a room for tonight and tomorrow.
meaning Friday and Saturday. I pull up the dates, and there's not a 3-night minimum, just 2. Me, okay, so for the weekend it's just a 2-night minimum, and we still do have rooms available.
Awesome, I'd love to reserve one.
Me, alright, so we have one room type available. It's a 1-bedroom king suite, and before taxes, the rate is $239.50 per night. The man shakes his head, still smiling.
You see, I'm in the wedding. I'm the best man.
Me, I understand. Unfortunately, the wedding block is closed. It closes around a month before the event. Man,
Is there any way you could give me the wedding rate? I am the best man.
your poor planning is not my problem, dude. If you're the best man, you should have booked already. Me, I'm sorry, but since the block is closed, that rate is no longer available.
You see, I've worked retail, so I understand how these things work. Can you get me a manager to lower the rate?
I've worked retail too, and it's not the same as hospitality. He still has this grin on his face. Me, unfortunately, there is no one here besides me right now. If you'd like to speak to a manager, one will be in tomorrow morning. I cannot promise that you will get the wedding rate. I see the light and arrogance drain from his face, as well as that smile.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
He walks away, and about an hour later he comes to book the room without mentioning the rate, even when I reiterate that it is $239.50. Man,
So, what room is that floor on?
me. So right now I can only see the room type. Once I finish your reservation, I can see what room numbers we have available. We have rooms on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th floor. Man,
What room is the groom in?
oh no. Me, I'm sorry, but I unfortunately cannot disclose that information. He looks confused, but luckily didn't complain and just called. I mean, if this wedding is so important and you're in the wedding party, why the heck did you not book months ago? Even if all the rooms in the block were booked, usually we can still offer the wedding rate before the cutoff if we have the availability. One of the sales managers that same night came over and handed me 2 invoices. She said, "So, these are the bills for the rehearsal dinner and the wedding. They both have outstanding balances, so I'm going to speak to the bridal party about that. Are you okay with taking payment by card?" Absolutely I am. So the best man doesn't want to pay for a room, and the wedding couple has yet to pay for their rehearsal dinner and entire wedding. No one ever came the rest of the night to pay. What is wrong with these people? I'm just glad I have the weekend off and don't have to deal with it. Entitled coworker tries to schedule meetings outside of contract time and criticizes my non-work plans. I have a coworker who is really disorganized and waits until the last minute to schedule things, and so that frequently means calling a meeting at 4 on a Friday. For reference, my 8-hour workday ends at 3, so these meetings make for 10-plus-hour days, and because the coworker is so disorganized and unprepared, we frequently have to cover things that they should have done ahead of time, like creating an agenda or desired outcome at the actual meeting. Because these are required meetings, usually only once or twice a month, I have to go to them no matter when they're scheduled and get extended pay for working overtime. But my coworker is supposed to give at least a week's notice, and I'd definitely rather have the free time than the money. Typically, if I don't hear by Thursday afternoon that they have scheduled the meeting for 4 o'clock on a Friday, I make other weekend plans, like hiking or bicycling or going out somewhere. Yesterday, Friday, the coworker attempted to schedule the meeting at 4:45, but didn't put it on my calendar until 3:05. I should have been off by then, but I had an end-of-day meeting that went over by a few minutes, so I was doing a last check of email and then shutting things down for the weekend. I saw the meeting request and responded that that wasn't enough notice for a meeting that far outside the workday, and that I normally would not have even seen the notice until the following Monday, and CC'd my boss just so they would know I wasn't trying to dodge any duties. Of course, coworker is upset because they're required to hold the meetings by law, and it's the absolute last day to do it without filing an extension, which they've been told by my boss they're not allowed to do unless there's extenuating circumstances, and they've known it for about 2 months. They just didn't plan for it. My boss calls at 3:10 saying, "Can you please do this now and end it at 4:10, and we will address it on Monday." Fine. I was planning on leaving town, but I can leave a little bit later. Coworker responds to my boss by email and says they're using personal time between 3:10 and 4:45, so they can't hold the meeting until then, and that nothing I'm doing could possibly be important enough that I can't attend the meeting at 4:45. Boss calls coworker. Coworker confessed that their kid's birthday party is at 6 that evening and that they have to go try to find a cake and party supplies for the party before the meeting, which is why they can't be available. Boss gets annoyed and says that boss and I, will do the meeting now and coworker will have to answer for it on Monday. Boss and I hold the meeting. It takes 20 minutes. I'm out of there by 3:45. Coworker sends me a text at 10:15 p.m. saying it's my fault they're in trouble and that they have a kid, so I should understand that people with kids come first, and that my activities and hobbies are pathetic, and it wouldn't have been that hard for me to just attend the meeting they scheduled, and that they'll have to go back and fix everything my boss and I did incorrectly because they like to do it in a specific way. My boss had already submitted it. I responded that I hoped they enjoyed their kid's birthday party and to have a good weekend. They responded that they forgot to invite people, so no one came, and thanked me for rubbing that in their face. Am I the jerk for kicking my sister out because she can't stand my violin playing? I'm 30, female, a musician, playing gigs and at an orchestra as a violinist. Rehearsals just resumed, so orchestra is my main source of income at the moment. My sister, 26, is a social worker, working 3 days a week, so minimal income, but she adores her job. I live in a small 2-bedroom apartment, both rooms around 9 or 10 square meters, using the second room as a practice room/storage for my instruments, 3 violins, 2 guitars, a digital piano, a small drum kit, and other stuff. 4 months ago, my sister broke up with her boyfriend, and I offered her my spare room, temporarily. I moved most of my stuff to the living room so I could fit a small bed in there. Sister moved in, but she asked me to move more stuff to the living room. I moved pretty much everything sans the piano, to the point where the living room became uninhabitable. Then she started complaining about my violin playing, saying that it gave her headaches. I told her I couldn't stop the daily practice without risking my only steady income. The arguments got worse. She told me to play only when she wasn't home, but with her work schedule, I couldn't afford that. I tried switching to the electric violin, but even that can be pretty loud, so it didn't help. Several times I reminded her this was only a temporary arrangement, but she didn't seem to hear me. 2 weeks ago, I arrived home to find my piano in the bathroom, near water and humidity, because my sister needed the space for her new double bed. When I told her she can't seriously expect me to store my piano there, she said, "Yeah, you will just have to sell it, I guess." I got so mad. I told her she has 7 days to leave, but she didn't take me seriously. For a week, I only talked to her to remind her how much time she had left, but she always laughed it off, told me to stop acting like a crazy person. Well, the deadline came, and I boxed up all of her stuff while she was at work, booked an Airbnb bed set close by, and drove her stuff there. She was livid, but couldn't do anything but take her new keys and stay there. The following week, she kept calling me with an increasingly apologetic tone, saying she shouldn't have moved my piano or bought a bed. She promised she would put more effort into finding a new place, and by the end of the week, I considered most of our issues at least addressed, so I drove to help her move back. But when I was carrying the first box down, she went, "I do hope you will at least stop with the violin this time. I absolutely refuse to take more of that violin." I dropped the box, wished her good luck, and left. Now, 2 days later, on one hand, it feels like a huge overreaction to leave my own sister literally homeless because of an argument about the violin. I know she cannot afford to stay there. But on the other hand, I have no plans to allow her back here, because I feel she would just continue crossing boundaries and never leave. So, am I the jerk? Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or their sister? Please let us know. Definitely the sister. No wonder her boyfriend dumped her. Mistaken identity. This happened to me probably 3 years ago, and I felt like sharing. I went to my nearby supermarket to grab a few things since I had a few days off of work when I noticed this lady in her late 40s, I think, storming up to me. At first, I didn't notice that she was staring me down as I saw her out of the corner of my eye, so I stepped forward to let her pass. Of course, she didn't want to get past me. She wanted me. She was clearly annoyed about something and abruptly said, "Why has this gone up to 10 pounds?" holding up some sort of cleaning product. Really puzzled, I said, "I'm not sure. I guess the store felt like raising the price." She huffed at me, not happy with my answer. Then she asked me if I could check the back of the store for a specific scent of this product. Of course, I was a bit oblivious to the fact she thought I worked there, so I rather sheepishly said, "Like, in the storeroom? I don't think I can just walk in there." Her mouth just dropped and she pretty much yelled, "Why can't you? I'm asking you to do something and I expect you to do it." I finally catch on to the fact that she thinks I'm an employee, despite the fact I'm wearing a galaxy print snapback hat over my purple hair, green jeans, and a hoodie. I tell her I don't work here, which made her even more angry. She replied, "So, it's your day off? Can't you just do this for me quickly?" I tell her that it is indeed my day off, but it's my day off from the pub down the road. Now she looked as puzzled as I did, so I tell her again I don't actually work for this supermarket. She turns around and storms off, looking a bit embarrassed, and I don't think much of it. As I go down a different aisle to grab my last few bits, I spot an actual employee who is more or less the spitting image of me. I'm a bit taller and skinnier, with almost the exact same shade of purple hair. At that moment, it all made sense. Edit. I should point out that even though this supermarket is slightly closer to me, I pretty much always do my weekly food shopping at a different supermarket chain as it's much bigger and I have a loyalty card for it. I rarely go to this shop as it's smaller and doesn't do certain things I like, but I just needed maybe a dozen things, so I didn't know my apparent doppelganger worked here. This lady was a somewhat frequent customer, however, so she was used to seeing a purple-haired guy working there and assumed I was him off shift. The actual employee helped her out, I'm sure, after I spoke with him. My Karen in-laws demand to know how much my new job pays. I'm male, 28, Canadian, and my fiance, female, 26, and her family are from Latin America. My mother and father-in-law found out about my new job and wanted to have a private conversation with me without my fiance, so they invited me to their house. They invited me into their guest room. My father-in-law asked me to leave my phone and keys at the dining table. They started talking about my new job. They had no idea how much I got paid and asked me to tell them about my salary, but I politely declined to tell them. They asked why. I just bluntly told them that it was none of their business. Father-in-law chimed in saying, "You're marrying my daughter. Darn right it's my business," and kept on talking about making his daughter's future secure. I assured him that his daughter is in good hands, and besides, money isn't everything, and love and respect are what's important. Mother-in-law disagreed and said that money is an important factor. Then they gave examples of issues I'll have in my marriage if I'm not capable of providing for my family. I refused to tell them, but again, assured them that I'm doing well financially, so no worries. Mother-in-law refused to drop it. Claimed I was being disrespectful by treating them like they were some strangers asking about how much I got paid and demanded I give her a number. I got so annoyed and wanted to excuse myself to the bathroom, but father-in-law got up and locked the door. I asked what the heck he was doing. He told me to calm down and that he'll unlock the door when this conversation is over. I blew up and told him that their behavior is unacceptable and what I earn is none of their darn business, and that only gold diggers behave like this, and right then they were giving me huge red flags. Mother-in-law gasped loudly, and father-in-law immediately unlocked the door and asked me to leave his house. I grabbed my phone and my keys and I walked out. Mother-in-law already called my fiance and was crying, saying I disrespected them in their house and called them names for just asking how I was doing with my new job. My fiance was upset, but I explained what her mom and dad had done. She said I not only hurt her parents, but hurt her as well by calling them names, and I owe them an apology, but I refused to. I asked if she thought what her parents did was okay, but she reminded me that she's with me because she loves me, whether I'm rich or poor, and it doesn't matter what others think. My fiance never cared about money, nor acted materialistic. She works as a babysitter and is happy with it. She said that I needed to apologize for calling them names and hurting their feelings for being worried about us. Although I assured them I'm doing well financially and that should have been the end of it. But I guess I escalated, they escalated, and now I'm refusing to apologize. My relationship with them might suffer if I don't. Am I the jerk? Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his in-laws? Please let us know. Yowza canowza. I'd be kind of scared if I was him, to be honest. Entitled grandma leaves my mom out in the cold without a care. I used to live with my grandma when I was 21. I'm 27 now and out of that place, in which she hid my laptop and threw away my food that I bought. But this story is not mine, but from my parents before I was born. Keep in mind, this is from my dad's perspective, not mine. Backstory. My grandma never agreed to my dad's marriage. She hated my mom, and I'll tell more stories of what she did in the wedding and before. My dad made an agreement with my grandparents that he could build a house in their huge field and that they can live together as a family. But in the meantime, they would live in the basement room while the house was being built. My grandparents agreed. My grandma was reluctant, but agreed. The basement room could only be entered through the outside, not the inside of the house. There was only one key for the basement room. My dad, to prevent my mom from staying out when she came back home from work, my dad left the key under the rug. Keep in mind, this was a country area and there were no other houses around. When this happened, the house my dad was building was already halfway built. My mom arrives home pregnant with me and tries to get the key from the rug, but it's not there. She looks around thinking that maybe my dad put it someplace else, so she looks for it, but she doesn't find it. My mom goes to my grandparents' house, knocks on the door, but grandma doesn't answer. Mom. Entitled grandma, I can't find the key under the rug. Did you pick it up? Entitled grandma. Doesn't respond at first in the house still. Mom. Entitled grandma. That's not my problem. Mom. Well, can you at least let me in your house while I wait for my husband to arrive? Entitled grandma. No, you have your own place. I don't have the key. That's not my problem. I told my son to not leave the key under the rug. My mom, defeated, sits in the entrance waiting for my dad to arrive. When he finally does, he's confused by seeing my pregnant mom sitting out in the cold at night, and he asks her, "What's wrong? Why aren't you inside?" Mom, I can't find the key. Dad, I left it under the rug. Mom, it's not there. As my dad looks and can't find the key, and the entitled grandma didn't let her in the house, he decides to confront grandma. Dad, entitled grandma, where's the key to my basement room? I told you not to leave it under the rug. Someone could steal it. Giving my dad the key. Dad, wait, you had the key? Why didn't you just give it to my wife? Because I wanted to teach you a lesson for disobeying me, so I took the key. Dad, entitled grandma, can we try to be peaceful? I'm trying to finish the house in the small part of the land I own, so we can leave your house. Don't make this more difficult. You ain't got crap. This is my property, and this is my rules, and what I say goes. I don't care what your father says. My dad, tired of this conflict that has been happening for the past weeks. Is that so? Okay. He goes downstairs with the key. Dad, honey, pack your bags. We're leaving. Forget the house and forget this family. Mom agreed, happy to be finally free of my entitled grandma's hair. As we were packing, my entitled grandma would continue spitting insults and saying, "Where do you think you're going? You can't leave. You've got nowhere to go. I'm your mother." Blah, blah, blah. My mom and dad decided to buy a house so far away as possible from my grandma and lived there for a few years. As for the half-built house, my grandma finished it with her own money, only to never use it because no one would rent it from her. A manager told me not to do part of my job, so I didn't. This was a few years ago when I worked in a 4-star hotel chain that would be very well known and was part of a larger company that had hotels of varying status. I was about 24. There were a few of us who worked primarily in room service, and the breakfast shift was always a solo shift. One morning I started, and as was customary, I started doing the prep, folding napkins, setting up 5 or 6 trays with pastries, etc. Per the pre-ordered breakfast cards, so I would only need to grab the correct tea/coffee and hot food later, as well as a few extra all-purpose trays for the people who call for room service last minute. I just get finished with this when the duty manager, I can't remember his full name, but nickname was Prem, bursts into the kitchen with a dirty plate in his hand and sees me in the area while putting it in the pile of dishes for the kitchen porter. He tells me across the kitchen,
What are you doing? It's so crazy out there that I have to help clear tables, and you're back here? Get out and help.
I replied that I had not gone up and walked the halls to collect the trays left out overnight yet, and he yelled some more and repeated that if he, a manager, is clearing tables, I better help regardless of if my job is actually in a different area. For the record, Prem was a menace. I witnessed him yell in people's faces until they cried several times. He would also routinely pick on anyone that was minimum wage floor staff. So I walk into the restaurant, and the supervisor, Jen, is at the door and sees me walk in. She covers for room service and has worked it in the past, so she knows I should be collecting trays now so that the place doesn't look like a war zone upstairs. She asks if I've done this, and I say no. Prem sent me to help because it's so busy. She says it's not very busy at all, they don't need me, and I should go upstairs and collect the dirty trays. I walk back into the kitchen, and Prem is still standing there.
What are you doing? I told you to go in and help.
I went in, and Jen said they don't need me and told me to collect the trays. He then accuses me of going to her and asking, can I go collect trays to get out of helping? So I tell him he can go in and ask her if she called me or if I approached her. This satisfies him that I'm at least not lying, but he's still not happy. He says,
I'm the duty manager. Manager. Jen is a supervisor. I'm higher up, so you do what I tell you. Go in there and help clear tables. I don't want to see you going up to collect trays.
I go back into the restaurant, and Jen looks at me confused. I tell her that Prem insists that I help and won't let me go upstairs and says he outranks her, so she says I should join the guys at Station 1 and help their area. Breakfast passes, and I pop out a few times to do my room services and come back with not too much issue. My shift is until 3 p.m., and breakfast ended at 10:30 a.m. At this point, nobody has been upstairs, and housekeeping will have been putting out dirty trays. I get a call on the room service mobile from a housekeeping manager saying that floor 4 has a dozen or so trays in the hall. I'm sorry, the duty manager has prioritized other areas at the moment and has said I cannot go up. I start doing my afternoon prep, polishing cutlery and the like. About 12 p.m., I get another call, this time from the housekeeping top manager. She tells me there are trays everywhere, and I politely apologize and explain that my duty manager has used the exact words,
I don't want to see you going up to collect trays.
She accepts this without question and asks that I help when I can. At 2 p.m., I get a call from the hotel's director of operations regarding the trays. At this point, there are trays in the hallways on all 7 floors, and the place looks filthy. Again, I politely explain what instructions I've received from Prem, and this is accepted without further question, and he says he will inquire into it. 3 p.m. arrives, and I have not heard anything else, nor have I cleaned up the pigsty upstairs. My replacement arrives, and I tell him what happened and apologize for the fact that he will have to collect those, but I tell him why. He laughs and decides to leave it until somebody else calls and informs him they are there. Shortly after this, Prem left the company. You can't fire me. I have kids. This was many years ago when I was the shop steward for a union. This means I was the one that had to mediate grievances between employees and management. Cast of characters. We've got manager and entitled worker. Manager calls me to discuss an issue with an employee he wanted to fire. He had done progressive discipline, had given her many chances, and now was just done. The issue was, the woman just didn't want to show up for work. He told me how many chances he had given her, and he wanted me present for her termination notice. It went like this. Manager: Karen, do you know why I asked for this meeting and why I asked the shop steward to be present? Karen: No, I have no idea. Manager: You were supposed to work yesterday 8 to 4:30, and that was written on the schedule, correct? Yes, but I overslept. Yes, and when you didn't show up for work, I called you several times, but you didn't answer. I couldn't hear my phone. I overslept, but when I woke up, I called you. That's true. You called me at 10:45, which is almost 3 hours after you were supposed to be at work. I called you as soon as I woke up. Manager: Yes, and you told me that you would be in to finish your shift. I did. I came into work as soon as I could. You showed up at 2:30. That's over 3 hours after you told me you were on your way in. I couldn't find daycare for my kids. Didn't you already arrange for daycare because you knew you were on the schedule for 8? Karen: But my daycare won't let me bring the kids in late. Manager: We've had this talk before, and I've given you several warnings that if you can't show up for work when you were scheduled, I was going to have to let you go. That's not fair. It's not my fault I couldn't find daycare. What's not fair is having your coworkers forced to work double shifts because you don't show up to relieve them. Finding daycare for your kids is your responsibility. If you want to work here, you have to be able to show up and work. You can't fire me. It's FMLA, Family Medical Leave Act, that states you can't be fired or docked pay if you are staying home to take care of a sick family member. Were your kids sick? I thought you said you overslept. No, I overslept, but I can't leave my kids without daycare, so it's FMLA. At this point, I step in. Karen, I would like to help you here, but if you just don't show up for work, there's no way I can save your job. You've been given more warnings, reprimands, and extra chances than our contract requires, and I don't have any grounds to grieve this termination. It's FMLA. I had to stay with my kids. You can grieve this under FMLA. Me: FMLA only applies if your kids are sick. You just overslept. Karen: FMLA. It's because of my kids. I can't leave kids. FMLA. You can't fire me. Manager: Okay, I think we're done here. Here's your termination notice. We're going to ask you to leave the building now. Security will escort you to your locker to clear out your stuff. FMLA. I have kids. You can't fire me. I have kids. Security shows up and she is escorted to her locker and out of the building, all the while screaming at the top of her lungs. They fired me because I have kids. I'm going to sue all of you. I'm going to own this business. You are all going to be fired. I have kids. You can't fire me because I have kids. Unfortunately, no one explained to her that having a job wasn't all about us agreeing to give you a paycheck. You actually have to show up for the job and do the work. She tried to protest her firing, was denied unemployment, tried to register a complaint against me with the union for failure to represent, the manager for discrimination, and the business for failure to uphold FMLA. You just can't fix bulletproof stupid. For clarification, she had done this same stunt without the FMLA component 5 times and she still had her job. I think she still believes she was done over on that FMLA thing. Have you ever had coworkers who wouldn't show up on time, so you had to stay late? If so, what did you do about it? Please let us know. When you have to pick up slack for incompetent coworkers, I honestly think that's a good excuse to talk to their manager. Am I the jerk for getting my husband a deep tissue massage for his birthday? This just happened, and I, 30 female, am fuming. It's my husband's, 32 male, birthday. I've been so excited for his birthday because we recently decided to get each other presents. Before, we would acknowledge the day, but not officially give presents. So a week ago, I asked him what he wanted, and he replied, I don't know. So one night, I saw an Instagram ad for a chiropractic clinic. It was a video of a deep tissue massage. I sent it to him like, hey, this looks cool. And he replied, wow, OMG, I would give anything to have a massage. I've been needing one for so long. Then cue his, I need a massage, comments every day the next 3 days. So I decided to seek out a really good remedial massage therapist and book him a 1-hour massage that cost me $100. I was really happy with this gift. I thought he would appreciate it and it was a useful gift. The next few days, I kept telling him I got him something and he kept asking what. I wanted to surprise him. He kept saying, "I don't like surprises. Just tell me in case it's something I don't want." But in my head, I'm thinking, you 100% want this, because he's been going on nonstop about how much he wants a massage. Well, how wrong I was. So it's the morning of his birthday. I'm so excited. I tell him I booked him a deep tissue massage for 6 p.m. and the following is our conversation. Him.
What? Are you serious? Did you already pay for it?
Me. Yes, it's with this great therapist too. Him.
Well, I'm not going. I don't want it. I tell you to tell me what you got because I knew you'd do something like this. You'd get me something I don't want.
My mind is absolutely blown. I blacked out for a bit because all I've heard for days is how much he desperately needs a massage. Me. But haven't you been saying for weeks how much you need a massage? Him.
Yes, but it doesn't mean I'll pay for one.
You're not paying. I am.
Well, you've wasted your money because I'm not going. I swear I'm not going. I don't want it.
If I could put my anger and frustration into words right now, I feel absolutely blown away by what happened. He messaged me saying I've ruined the day because of getting him this gift. Am I the jerk? I think I might be the jerk for not telling him beforehand that I was planning to get him this. But aren't gifts meant to be surprises? I genuinely thought I hit the nail on the head for this one. I'm very frustrated and confused. Edit. I confronted him why he did what he did. He started saying there's many other things I could have gotten. I said, I know, but right now I want to know the reason for your reaction. He says he doesn't like that I had already booked and therefore he had to commit to attend. Apparently, he needs to be in control of his social interactions. And I do know that he has social anxiety, but it was always in terms of crowds. We would go shopping, etc. Fine. And he goes to appointments with new people. Fine. So since this was a one-on-one massage, I didn't think it would be an issue. But apparently it was. He needs more time to mentally prepare. So there we have it. Edit. Guys, he didn't want me to give him a massage. He thinks I'm terrible at it. He admitted that he thinks a massage isn't a big enough gift. He wanted something better or bigger, or actually material, like a massage tool instead of an appointment. Final edit. Now I'm over it. I went and got him a pre-workout, a shaker, and 2 pizzas to apologize for ruining his day because his mood was off all day. He took the gifts. I said, "That's it? You won't say it was nice?" And he goes, "No, I'm still upset." Then, "You didn't get any drink?" I'm honestly going to cry. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her husband? Please let us know. Most unappreciative husband of the year right here. Okay, I quit then. In high school, I got a part-time job at a food store we would call No Skills. At the time, minimum wage was $5.15 an hour, and they paid $9 an hour if you worked graveyards. That was great money, so I worked graveyards Friday and Saturday nights during the school year. I got in at 8 p.m. and left at about 7 in the morning. Black Friday was coming up in about a month, and my friends liked to go out and shop around for fun. I requested to leave early at 10 a month in advance, which was approved by the cool manager I'll call Charlie. That night comes, and the jerk manager is working. We'll call him Dave. Dave decided to give the night off to 2 other employees, leaving us very short-staffed. I, of course, requested my time off a month ago, so whatever, not my issue. I get into work and let him know I'm leaving at 10 just as a reminder. His response was,
"We'll see how far along we are by then and see."
I didn't like how he phrased that, but I thought, whatever, I'm leaving either way. So it's about 9:50. I've been working my butt off stocking shelves to get as much done as possible and go to let him know that I'm leaving. He stares at me and says we are too far behind and I can't leave and to come ask him at 11 instead. I tell him no, I have plans and took it off, so I'm heading out. He starts to grumble to himself, gives this little speech about how everyone else will have to stay super late if I go, yada yada. I say I'm still leaving. I took it off a month ago, so it was well known in advance. He stares at me and tells me if I leave, I shouldn't bother coming back and that I will be fired. High school me says that's not fair and whatnot. Then he just says I can stay or lose my job. This job is just so I can have spending money, but he seems to think I'm like some other staff who actually need the job and can be bullied around. I just tell him, okay, I quit. and started to walk away. He tried to say something, but he just mumbled as he had no idea what to say. He never expected me to actually leave. The next day, Charlie calls me up and apologizes for what happened and asks if I really wanted to quit. I told him no and about what had happened. He assured me Dave would leave me alone and had been talked to. I later found out he was also no longer allowed to approve time off anymore since he left the store so short-staffed and the morning crew actually has to help stock the shelves because it still wasn't done. Bonus story. I did stay working there and over the summer went full-time. A buddy of mine was jealous of the money I made and also got a job there working graveyards with me. Part of the job is facing the aisles before leaving to make it look all pretty. The whole team would tackle the aisles together so that we could talk while doing it. With my buddy being new, we played a little joke and told him that part of facing includes shaking all the salad dressings as they would settle during the day. We left him to it and moved on, and about 2 aisles later we notice he's still not with us, and Charlie, who would help us face when his duties were done, asked where he was. We told him the joke and went back to check on him. To our amazement, he was with the dressings shaking them and had already shaken most of them already. We figured he was being a smart guy and was doing it so he didn't have to face, but when we told him it was a joke, he got pretty upset, which made it even funnier. Am I the jerk for kicking my daughter's boyfriend out of the house? I'm a mother of 2 girls, Lily, who's 14, and Monica, who's 21. Monica has a boyfriend, who's 20, who visits with her often. To be frank, he's not too polite, or to rephrase, he lacks social skills and always ends up doing things that can be annoying, whether intentional or not. It's been affecting Lily, and there had been instances where Monica's boyfriend ruined Lily's math project and ruined her camera by dropping it. Because of his increasingly reckless behavior, I've set some basic rules and asked him to follow them, like not touching any stuff that belongs to Lily. Monica didn't approve and said I was treating her boyfriend like a kid and asked me to treat him like it's his own home. But I made it clear that he comes over as a guest and should be behaving as such, not running around the house causing damages like kids do. A few days ago was Lily's birthday. My sister picked up the cake from the bakery store that we pre-ordered and I kept it in the refrigerator till we got finished with preparations. We were upstairs while Monica's boyfriend was in the living room. I went downstairs and into the kitchen to get the cake. I opened the refrigerator and saw that someone had cut and taken a piece of the birthday cake. I was infuriated. I figured it was Monica's boyfriend. I went to ask him and he said it was him. I screamed at him and he said he was sorry but he was hungry. I told him that was my daughter's birthday cake and I asked if there was literally nothing he could have eaten and he said yes, there was, but he really just wanted a piece of that cake because he couldn't wait till the party started. I kept screaming at him that he ruined the entire party. Now Lily won't even want to blow the candles out when the cake looks like that. He got defensive and said that it didn't matter if he ate it before Lily blew the candles out and that all those birthday party rules are lame and people should just eat the cake once it arrives. Also said that it wasn't like he ate the whole thing. I lost it and told him to get out of my house. He kept calling out for Monica to come downstairs and deal with me. Monica yelled at him and thought that was it. Saying what he did didn't warrant me kicking him out, but I insisted he leave immediately. She begged me to let it go, but I said not a chance. They both left after they argued with me and got my sister involved. We had to delay the celebration for 2 hours so we could get another cake. Unlike the previous one, this one wasn't customized. Monica has been angry with me for how I treated her boyfriend and kicking him out on Lily's birthday, and said that Lily wouldn't have minded, but I was disrespecting her boyfriend and looking for excuses to keep him out of the house. Also said I caused them to miss the party. She wanted me to call him and apologize, but I refused. Was I the jerk here? Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her daughter's boyfriend? Please let us know. That boyfriend sounds like he belongs in a sitcom, not in someone's actual house. Entitled mom threatens to get me fired if I don't fix her kids' grades. Background: I teach labs at a university level. I have a master's degree and all the labs I teach are for engineers. We finished this course on Thursday and I gave out the grades, submitted the course file, and that was that. I was pretty comfortable with the grades I gave. Given the situation, I didn't do an exam, but a project. Had dropped the lowest and graded while closing both eyes. Today at 2:13 a.m. my phone rings. I never have received a call that late, and in my haze to wake up, I thought someone had died or something, so I picked up in a rush, and then the following conversation happened. We've got entitled Mom, and we've got me, the person who regrets being nice. Me. What's going on? Is everything okay? Entitled Mom. Hi, is this Dr. Barron? Me. No, sorry, I believe you have the wrong number. I think you meant to call my brother. Note, my brother is a medical doctor. I am a master's student, not a PhD student. I do not hold the doctor title. Entitled Mom. No, this is the right number. You taught my kid this semester and gave him a B-. Me. Oh, sorry, I got confused with being called a doctor. Yes, I taught your kid and he earned a B-. Excuse me, but how did you get my number? That doesn't matter. I want you to fix the grade to an A. My kid worked hard, and you didn't grade him fairly. So I thought I'd be nice and give you an opportunity to fix it before I escalate. Me. I will not discuss grades with you. Also, who calls at 2 a.m.? Besides, please contact the department chair for inquiries. Kindly don't contact me again. Listen to me. If you don't fix the grade, I'll report you to the school for harassing my kid. Me. What? Ah, so I got your attention, eh? Yeah, you heard me. I'll report you for harassing my kid. Me. You do realize we were in lockdown this entire time, and I have never been physically in the same place throughout this time, right? Oh, I know that. I'm not stupid. So you're going to make a fake report about me? Yep, so fix the grade, or I'll have you thrown out of the school. Did you hear me? You know I record my calls, right? Forget you. I am reporting you for harassing me and my kid. She hung up after. I forwarded the recorded call to my master advisor, school dean, and department chair. I explained everything in the email and went to sleep. Haven't heard anything official yet, but my master's advisor texted me that he heard the call and thinks she's insane. They haven't received a report or anything yet. After checking on the kid's work, he deserved a D. If she escalates this, I'll present his work and agree to correct his grade to a D. We'll update if I hear anything. Karen completely loses it when my computer isn't able to play Roblox. Info and backstory. I'm 14 and have lots of things I enjoy doing. Among them all is computers. Building them, benchmarking them, selling, gaming, all of it I love. Recently though, we kind of lost our foothold in life, which caused us to not have the financial prowess we did before. It was never a lot, but enough. This caused me to sell my computer, and ever since I've been using a gateway laptop that's very, very old, Pentium T4200 paired with a Vista, so it doesn't run many games. A list of games it can run are as follows: Counter-Strike Source, Counter-Strike Condition Zero, and Half-Life, all at an average of 25 to 49 frames per second. Story. My aunt, same one who devalued my eagle penny, comes over with her daughter and her daughter's friend. In this story, only one is really important right now. Let's call the entitled friend Nate, as he's the important one for right now. Nate comes knocking on my door and then opens it. I'm playing CSS with a few friends who have the game. Nate. I was told I could play Minecraft on your computer. Me. Sure, in like 10 minutes. To the kid's credit, he's very patient and usually quite nice. He came from an unstable home, so I don't entirely blame him. 10 minutes pass, and I can see he's a bit impatient. I had some schoolwork I could do on my phone, so I set him up on Minecraft. The only problem is, my computer is way too low spec to run Minecraft. The only Minecraft I got to run at a playable frame rate, 40 frames per second, was beta 1.7 at tiny render distance. I got him on the game and then left, thinking nothing of it. Less than 15 minutes later, I heard a loud banging noise. The kid had changed the version to pre-release 1.17 and blue screened the whole machine. The banging was him lifting the computer and bashing it on the desk. I go into the room to see the issue and saw the blue screen. At the time, I thought the banging may have been from outside. The rest of the kids were in our above-ground pool, and this conversation ensued. Nate. I tried to update Minecraft, and your computer kicked me out. Me. You're not supposed to do that. I explained to you my computer is very old, and we don't have much money for a new one. This kid always had the best of the best, so he had a nice gaming rig. Nate. Well, I'm bored anyway. I'm going outside. Me. All right. I restart my computer and go back to playing CSS with my friends for around an hour before my little cousin, comes into my room. Let's call her Entitled Cousin, as she becomes important now. Entitled Cousin. Hey, OP, can I play Roblox on your computer? She asks nicely for once. Me. Oh, hey, sorry, but my computer can't run Roblox. This is half true. It can run very basic games, but can't run games more advanced, like Arsenal, Royal High, Adopt Me. If you try to run games more advanced, you'll hit 2 gigabytes of RAM usage, and that blue screens the computer. She only plays Adopt Me and Royal High. Entitled Cousin. You're lying. I've seen you play Roblox on it before. I wasn't playing Roblox at the time. I was playing Doom. Me. Well, I never did play Roblox on this. I'm telling Mom. She starts to storm off, and I quickly realize I'm in deep trouble. I quickly tell my friends what's happening before chaos strikes. Entitled Mom walks into my room and says, "Why can't she play Roblox?" Me. My computer physically cannot run Roblox. Do you not know about computers? I do know about computers. Also, can't she just play Roblox on your iPhone? She has an iPhone X, which is more than capable. Entitled Mom. Because my phone can't run Roblox. Your computer obviously can. Look, it's 100 times the size, she says, putting her phone next to the laptop, mocking me like a kid. At this point, I know she can't be reasoned with, and I just cave and get her on her Roblox account and lay in my bed. Entitled Cousin, at first, is happily playing Roblox lobby games before she joins Royal High. This whole time, I'm on my phone next to her, oblivious. I was actually surprised it was playing at above 15 frames per second when I looked at what she was doing. I eventually left my room after 30 minutes because I needed to do the dishes. Apparently, Nate had been inside and was in the bathroom when I walked by, slipping into my room when I left. I'm unaware how long he was in there, but maybe 20 minutes before I hear a crash. I go into the room and find that they had thrown the laptop to the floor. I lose my temper and say to get out. I look at my laptop, now on the floor, and see the display still works, but to my horror, she had opened up 23 Chrome tabs, had Royal High still running, and like 12 YouTube videos, all at 720p, taking up well over 2 gigabytes of RAM. I don't know how it didn't blue screen, but it obviously wasn't working because you couldn't click on anything. This laptop is junk, yes, but I paid $30 for it. I scrounged my money, and to watch them violate my things like this made me upset. I couldn't even turn it off, it was running so slow. It had to have taken 3 gigabytes at least for its slowness. Entitled Mom walks into the room and starts to get mad at me. "Why did you kick them off the computer?" she says, taking the laptop in her arms. She tries to click stuff, but it doesn't work. "Why isn't the computer working?" Me. "Because your daughter and her friend broke it." "They wouldn't do such a thing. They said you threw it to the ground because you wanted to play on it. I believe them. I wouldn't count on what you say. Learn some manners. We are guests, you jerk. We are priority." She throws the laptop on the floor with force before walking out. My mom heard this. She's barred from our house now. The laptop still works, but she threw it so hard it broke the battery and only works plugged into a wall. It runs at 1/3 the speed it used to, and it only plays CSS at 15 frames per second instead of 30 to 45. The fans don't work, and it blue screened every few hours. But I'm hoping to save for a new PC very soon, but it's unlikely. Edit. No, I cannot sue, as we don't have the means, and if I did, it would be useless because the laptop price would be done over by legal fees. Speaking of Roblox, have you ever played Roblox? Or how about Minecraft? Please let us know. Minecraft for the win, bruh. Am I the jerk for demanding payment for items ruined by a kid I was supposed to supervise? A few days ago, my neighbors, early 40s, approached me and asked if I would be willing to watch their daughter, who's about 11 or 12, Rhea, while they went to get their shots. I agreed. I made it clear to my neighbors that they would have to pick up Rhea before 1:30 p.m., as I had a court hearing that I couldn't miss under any circumstances. I am a lawyer. They promised they would be back in time. At around 1:30 p.m., they informed me that they would be late. It was too late to make any alternate arrangements, so I fixed Rhea a quick lunch and told her to watch TV, or Netflix. I have the kid mode on. I finished up my hearing around 3 and came out to see Rhea. I found her in my room trying on my heels, lipstick, and other courtroom gear, such as a black blazer and a robe. The lipsticks were broken, the white shirts were stained, and the heels were scuffed. I do not know how that girl managed to cause so much damage in the first place. I was angry, but I did not see it fit to reprimand her. Rhea's parents finally showed up around 3:30 p.m. and took her home. I asked to have a word with one of them. Her father stayed back, and I told him about the items she ruined and that I expected him to repay the amount for cleaning/replacement after I showed them the receipts. I expected him to apologize, but instead, he blew up at me and accused me of leaving his kid alone and claimed that anything could have happened to her. He even threatened to file a case against me. I was taken aback. Firstly, I would not have left her unsupervised if him and his wife would have returned on time. Secondly, I do not feel that 11 is an age where she's going to be in danger if left alone. I told him to try his luck in court and stated that if he doesn't agree, I would send them a demand notice for the aforementioned costs. Him and his wife have gotten the Residents Association involved, and while some of them are on my side, others are saying I'm the jerk for using the lawyer card over something so tiny. The total cost of the items ruined is well over 10,000 rupees. So, am I the jerk? Edit. I'm sorry I left out this crucial detail. I never actually left my home. I was attending the hearing virtually and was in a different room in the same house. The door was closed, but unlocked. I told Rhea she could enter or call out my name if she needed anything. Update. This morning, Rhea's mother came to see me. She apologized for her daughter and her husband and said that they were late because Rhea's father thought it would be a good idea to not complete the mandatory registration for their shots and simply tried to walk into a center. She was terrified at the idea of going to court and said she would try to get her husband to pay. She's a housewife, no independent income. I told her not to worry. I won't take the costs of the items and I wouldn't send any notice. I also wouldn't be watching their kid again. She understands and apologized once more. She bought some delicious food as well. She admitted that her husband spoils their daughter and she is also concerned, but she is silenced by him. Well, what would you do in this situation? Would you tell them they have to pay you for the items or not? Please let us know. I can't drive anywhere without permission? Okay, I'll follow that rule maliciously. This happened when I was 16 years old and just got my driver's license. My parents had me run to the store to pick up some groceries. I stopped by my friend's house on the way back home for maybe 5 minutes to show him I got my license and I was out driving alone. It was really a fun moment in the life of a 16-year-old. My stepmom, Mary Ann, freaked out. "We did not give you permission to drive to Bill's house. We told you to go to the store and that is all." I told Mary Ann and my dad that they had let me drive to Matt's house the day before, so I didn't think it was a big deal. They went unreasonable and laid down the unbendable rule that set up the malicious compliance. "You are not allowed to drive anywhere we do not give explicit permission for you to drive, period. End of sentence. Just because you were allowed to do it previously does not ever give you the permission another time. Ever." Fast forward 3 days later. My 13-year-old stepsister has been a jerk to me all day, and I'm sick of her BS. She goes quiet for about 30 minutes and then comes out all sickly sweet. "Hey Brian, it's time to take me to ballet." I've taken her to ballet 3 days a week since I got my license. It's basically one of my chores, but I see my opportunity to say, "Forget you," to all 3 of them at once. "Sorry, Tina, I'm not allowed to take you to ballet. The parents didn't tell me to take you, and I don't want to get in trouble." She screams, she cries, she begs, she threatens. She calls her mom and leaves a message. She calls my dad and leaves a message. Just like Steve Miller says, time keeps on slipping into the future. I'm not sure I'm brave enough to hang on to the bitter end and actually go through with it. I'm shaking, but I know I've got them dead to rights. No call back from the parents, and the clock goes on past the start of her class. Stepmom comes home and Tina runs to meet her. "Tina, what are you doing here? You're supposed to be at ballet." I hear Tina tell her rendition of the story, leaving out how miserable she had been, and they go back and forth. Marianne comes pounding down the hall and yells, "As God is my witness, you just wait till your father gets home." I had to stifle a laugh because I never really believed people actually said that. An hour later, Dad comes home and the two of them go running out to meet him and tell him how horrible I was. I wait in my room for the hammer to fall. About 10 minutes later, my dad calls down the hall. "Brian, would you please come down here and talk to us?" "Well, Brian, you did it." "What do you mean, Dad?" "You got us all, and there's absolutely nothing we can do about it. Okay, let's make this reasonable for everyone." And they did. They agreed that they were over the top. They recognized that Tina isn't always very nice to me, and they spoke to her about that. I was allowed to have reasonable freedom if I was driving somewhere, since I had good grades and had never been in trouble. I walked down the hall back to my room, my back to my parents, with the world's biggest grin on my face. Furious guest demands to know why we charged his card for room damage. Duh. I work at a Motel 6, which is franchised and owned by a guy who owns around 75% of Motel 6s in our state, as well as Purple Roof Inn in this state and several neighboring states. He also owns a bunch of Super 7s as well, and our policy is to take credit cards and cash without a security deposit. Well, that might change after this, and I hope so. That policy is insane. I don't know how you can own that many hotels and not realize what a disaster policy it is to not take a security deposit with cash payments, especially considering the brands he owns. So for the past week or so, we've had some sketchy people check into a variety of rooms on various days. We still have our lockdown policies in place concerning the number of people per room. For our 2-bed rooms, it's 4 people, exception for families and their kids. Also, housekeepers will not enter stayover rooms, so we have linens, towels, etc. at the desk. So in this particular room, I've noticed that it's been having heavy traffic. For our area, that usually means crime. I keep an eye on that room throughout the week and notice that there are 5 other rooms that the people in that room seem to be familiar with. Like, I'd see them meeting in the parking lot, exchanging packages, and going in and out of each other's rooms, etc. So I inform my GM and the other shifts, and I keep my eyes on those rooms through the week. They aren't doing anything overt and are generally staying within our rooms, except for a noise complaint here and there. About 2 days before they checked out, I noticed an increase in people on bikes coming and going from those rooms with backpacks, so I'm certain that crime is involved. But as I said, they were keeping within our rules, and we've been pretty lax about occupancy cap, but not for like party rooms with 10 people. So I just note what's happening. So they check out en masse, and I come in that day, and my boss is fuming. She says the main room that I initially took notice of broke the toilet. I thought, oh, okay, probably the handle or maybe the toilet seat. But no, they broke the entire toilet in half. How? I do not know. The toilet tank cover was shattered in the shower. Again, I do not know how. Their headboards were busted off the wall, and the water leaked into 3 adjoining rooms, not occupied, and caused damage. She then said that 2 of the other rooms were tattooing and spilled ink all over the floor and on the beds, so now those linens are trash and we cannot rent those rooms out until the flooring is replaced. One of the rooms had hair dye all over it, on the beds and the towels, so those are trash now. And the rooms were trashed, like multiple days of food containers stacked around the trash can trashed, so those rooms cannot be rented until we can clean and air them out. And of course, they smoked in all of them. My boss called the owner and he blew up on her, asking her why were we renting to people like that, like we can tell. He asked if she got payment for the damage, and of course she didn't because they paid cash. He flipped out and she reminded him of his policy, which sort of shut him up. I walked in just as she was hanging up. So I checked the guy's stay history and he did have a card on file for one of those days, so my boss told me to run it for $500, and surprisingly it went through. So that cheered her up a bit. So a bit later on in my shift, the guy calls me screaming and asking why we charged his card. I calmly explained it was for room damages, and he screams, "What damages?" Like, really? Come on, you know what I'm talking about. I say the documented damage from the room that we're reporting to the police as well, and that shuts him up. He hung up on me and he hasn't called back. Of course, we didn't report anything to the police, but we did document everything. The next day, one of the people from those rooms tried to check back in, and my boss was like, nope, but pretended to get their ID for DNR. Needless to say, all those rooms are also perma-DNR. You must have your director's permission to enter the building. Hi everyone. I recently executed a bit of malicious compliance that I thought I'd share with you. During lockdown, we haven't been able to regularly access our office and have instead had to work from home. Most of my team are field-based anyway, so it hasn't been a huge problem. Next to our main office is a workshop/storage area that's managed and accessed only by my team. We use this to store equipment and materials and carry out some work in there. Typically, 1 or 2 team members will be there each day, though it could be as many as 5. If staff are collecting and dropping off equipment, they might need 2 or more visits per day. On the rare occasion we do need to go into the main office, we have to get permission from a director. We would normally do this a few days in advance once we had a piece of work that required access. Without this permission, security won't let us in. As the offices are in a city center location, parking is expensive, but our employer will provide it in our own secure car park. To access this car park, again, you have to email for permission. At some point, someone noticed that staff were requesting parking in the car park, but not access to the main building. I was asked about this by the facility manager as there was a concern that people were trying to get free parking for personal errands and not work. I explained that the staff were carrying out work or collecting equipment from the store and I'd given them permission. I was told that this was unacceptable and only our director could give permission to access buildings. I decided the best way to prove my point was with a little malicious compliance. I did a few checks and saw that there was an almost immediate opportunity. I instructed my staff that they weren't to access the workshop/store unless they had permission. I said that I knew it was ridiculous, but I had a plan and everything would be sorted within a week. I also told them that for the next few days, we would be catching up with all of our mandatory training and odd jobs. I told staff if any requests for work came in, to ask the customer to call back later in the week, and I would delay any new jobs being allocated for a few days. This all happened on the Tuesday. Wednesday and Thursday were spent catching up on boring admin and e-learning, and then Friday arrives. I allocate jobs to staff and advise my team that if they need access to the workshop/store, then they must email for permission, and entering without consent could lead to disciplinary action. I advised that they should wait by the security desk at the main building until permission was granted. A few hours into the day, I start getting emails from my staff saying they've needed access to the store and have emailed for permission but haven't heard back. I advised that they wait. After another hour or so, I get an irate phone call from the facility manager asking what's going on. I explained that my staff aren't allowed in without permission and so they are waiting by security, so there are no allegations of them sneaking into the workshop. He asks why permission wasn't granted in advance, and I explained that the work requests had only come in on that day. He explains that the director is on leave and can't grant permission, but he could grant in his absence. I refused and said that only our director could give permission. I agreed to ask the staff to leave for home and to postpone their jobs. Monday rolled around and I got a phone call from the director. He had received complaints from the facility manager and a few other senior managers about the situation. Thankfully, he realized how ridiculous the situation was and said he had only agreed to keep the facility manager quiet. It was clear that I'd orchestrated the situation, but the director was willing to take the blame for the issue. The decision was reversed and now staff don't need permission. One other plus point is that I've stopped receiving email reminders about my team members' training being out of date. Finally saw one. I follow these "I don't work here lady" posts with interest, but it is very rare I ever see anyone go off on one of these rants. That is, until today. You're going to need just a little context here though. I live in the north of England in what is seen as quite an affluent area. Not that all of us who live here are affluent. There are definitely two ends of town, and I live in the more down-to-earth end of town. At the other end, you see lots of new Mercedes, Audis, BMWs, Lexus, and now Tesla cars being driven around. I drive a 6-year-old Ford. You get the idea. What we do have near me are a really few excellent artisan shops. There's a butcher selling some of the best beef I've ever tasted, and we have a craft brewery and a coffee roaster. We also have a small supermarket, and this is where this all takes place. Just up the road, we have what we call a special school. It deals with adults with a range of disabilities. The carers work one-on-one with the kids, and they take them out to shops and get them into shopping independently. Those of us who live here know the carers, know the kids, and always have a chat when they're in the shops. It's lovely to see some of them when they make independent purchases. This is where caring comes into play. I had gone into the supermarket to pick up a few things for dinner tonight and bumped into one of the carers who I know from volunteering. She told the girl she was with to carry on around the shop and collect her shopping. As we were chatting, I saw a Tesla pull up in the disabled spot outside, and Karen walks in. I mentioned as she passed that she shouldn't be in the disabled spot, and she just looked straight past me and carried on. Shortly after, there was a raised voice, and the carer and I heard, "Don't just stand there looking stupid. Go and get me a bottle from the back. Now!" The kids all wear a lanyard and a badge around their neck telling you that they're at the school, and this must have confused Karen. As we rounded the corner, we saw the terrified kid in tears and Karen standing there. The next words out of her mouth were, "This place gets worse. They must be employing morons now." The carer stepped in and said, "You need to stop. This girl is in my care and is disabled." Karen responded and said, "They shouldn't be out with normal people, and you should be controlling her." The carer was dumbstruck. It was at this point I decided it was time I chipped in. What sort of person thinks their expensive car gives them the right to park where disabled people have a space reserved for them, and then hurl insults at people being given the opportunity to start living their life as independently as they can? Karen came back with the, "We worked for everything we have." In the North, we have a term for describing people with money and no class, and I loved her face when I turned back to her and said, "No, love. You're just all fur coat and no class." No major histrionics at the end. She just stormed out. Nobody got arrested. We calmed the girl down and helped her finish her shopping, and I told her not to worry. Not everybody is as sad as Karen was. Boss fires best employee because of my compliance. Hospitality isn't known for its amazing personalities, but no one could take the cake of a boss and his wife that I worked for about a decade ago. They took over a beautiful pub/restaurant in a mountain range that the locals love to visit. It would have taken almost no effort at all to have a very successful business, as there was no real competition and the area was very affluent. On weekends, there was always a queue of customers. Unfortunately for all the staff and the locals mentioned, the owners were on a massive ego trip, having moved from the city to set up this restaurant as a way to settle down, which they clearly were not capable of in the slightest. The wife boss will now be known as Karen. They were so highly strung that the hairs would stand up on the back of your neck when they came into the building. I learned to expect that every word that came out of their mouths to be either barking orders or criticizing even the most petty of details. I kid you not, Karen yelled at me once because I hadn't turned all the coffee cup handles so that they were pointing in the same direction. I started working there part-time and managed to put up with their antics much better than the countless other part-timers that came and went. For one, I was content to just do whatever they told me, as deep down I knew it would come back to bite them in the end. Being their longest staff member, after just 4 months, I kid you not, I got the best pick of shifts. Also, by being one of the only fully trained members of staff, I never really worked directly with them, as I would cover the shifts on their days off. Every day, they seemed to be getting more and more stressed and micromanaging, to the point they decided to just install cameras everywhere so they could sit at home and monitor the staff. I would get calls multiple times an hour telling me things like, "One of the tables needs to be cleared." The customers had barely left. Or that I was standing and talking to a local too long and should be sweeping or something. Unfortunately, this kind of corporate McDonald's-style ethos didn't really work when the majority of your customers were regulars who wanted a coffee, a meal, and a 10-minute chat with a friendly face. One thing they were really hung up on was the till. Such was their paranoia about the till that only the bosses, myself, and one other girl, Jessica, could operate it no matter what or how busy we were, which of course led to multiple situations of inconvenience. Also, we had to count out the till several times a day and deposit the money in the safe, even if we had only made $20. After a particularly busy day, I was closing and had received new instructions just that day from Karen that from now on, we would keep all big denominations $50 or more, cue eye roll, hidden under the main compartment of the till. From the moment she said it, I knew it was another nitpicky rule that she'd forget about straight away. So of course, what else should I do but follow orders? The next morning, when I finally checked my phone around 10 a.m., I saw that I had 10 missed calls from work, and also worryingly from Jessica, the other staff member who I got on really well with. I called Jessica first to hear her tell me that Karen had come in and counted the till, and when she couldn't find $50, accused Jessica of stealing it and fired her on the spot. No, I'm not joking. Jessica had called me from the car park to say goodbye, and while I immediately knew what happened and told her about it, as well as saying sorry to her, we were both glad she didn't have to work in that nightmare place anymore. I was angry that the owners had treated Jessica like that. I knew they were crazy, but to fire someone accusing them of stealing was a new low. However, I did get great satisfaction from calling them and putting on my best facade of nonplussed. The conversation went like this. Karen, I've just had to fire Jessica as she was caught stealing. The till is missing $50. I still couldn't believe that they didn't ask me first, as I was the last one to actually count the money the night before. Why did they even think it was Jessica and not me? They were completely nuts. Me, in my best malicious compliance voice. Oh, that's weird. I definitely counted it correctly and put all the money just as you told me, with the $50 notes in the bottom compartment as you explained just yesterday. I'm not going to lie. The following pause brought me great glee as I could practically hear the buzzing in Karen's head as she opened the till and found the missing $50 note right where it should be. Having just fired the second longest staff member they had, me still being the first, meant they had to work all of Jessica's shifts before we could hire and train another, saying goodbye to all their time off for weeks. Also, I made sure to tell our regular customers, who took the time to get to know the staff by name, what had happened when they asked where lovely Jessica had gone. Many stopped coming in unless it was my shift, having seen the real personalities of the bosses, and they tipped the staff more too. I stayed there for a short while longer and was happy to hear that Jessica had found a job in a much nicer cafe soon after leaving. I left after I had saved up money to go traveling and found out that the restaurant closed just a few weeks later. I don't think they even lasted a year total. Whatever they did next, I do hope it didn't involve employing anyone else, as they definitely do not have the personalities to manage staff.
Support our channel by joining as a member today, and we'll give you a shout out in our next video.
Or come watch this video next. You won't believe what Karen does in that one.